There is a practice, a simple observation, that tells us much about our inner world. Imagine trying to keep a single candle lit in a storm. At first, you cup your hands around the fragile flame, your body a shield against the wind. The flame flickers, it dances wildly, threatening to vanish with every gust. You might build a small wall of stones, you might seek shelter behind a rock. But the wind is relentless, it finds every crack, every opening. This struggle, this desperate attempt to protect a small vulnerable light from the overwhelming force of the world, is the story of how we often live. The candle is our peace, our stillness, our fragile sense of okayness. And the wind is life itself, with its inevitable challenges, its unexpected losses, its sudden gusts of fear and sorrow. We are taught to fight the wind, to see it as an enemy to our flame. But what if the struggle itself is the problem? What if, instead of fighting the wind, we could learn to build a lantern? A lantern does not defeat the wind. It creates a space for the wind and the flame to coexist, for the light to shine steadily, not in spite of the storm, but within it. This very struggle is the quiet hum of anxiety that underscores our modern lives. It's the weight of unspoken fears, the pressure of constant expectation, the endless loop of what-ifs that plays in the back of our minds. We have become experts at avoiding pain. We numb it with distraction. We suppress it with positivity. We medicate it into silence. We have come to believe that suffering is a mistake, a system error in the programming of our lives, a sign that we have failed. And yet, the more we run from our own shadow, the larger it looms behind us. The more we try to silence our pain, the louder it screams in the quiet of the night. The truth is, pain is not a flaw in the design. It is a fundamental, unavoidable, and deeply intimate part of the human experience. To deny it is to deny a part of ourselves. But there is another way, an ancient path that offers not an escape, but a transformation. This path does not promise a life free from the wind, but rather, it gives us the tools to build that lantern. Buddhist wisdom, for thousands of years, has not asked, how can we eliminate suffering? Instead, it courageously asks a far more profound question. What is this suffering trying to teach me? It invites us to turn around, to face our own storm with a gentle curiosity. It suggests that within the very heart of our pain lies the seed of our greatest wisdom, our deepest compassion, and our most authentic freedom. This is a journey of spiritual alchemy, of learning how to turn the poison of our suffering into the nectar of awakening. It is the path of discovering that our pain, the very thing we have spent our lives running from, can become our greatest teacher. To begin a journey of healing, we must first have a clear diagnosis. No doctor can prescribe a cure without first understanding the illness, without naming it, without looking at it directly, and without fear. In this, the Buddha was the greatest of physicians. His first teaching, the foundation upon which all other wisdom rests, was not a commandment, nor a promise of salvation, but a simple, direct, and profoundly courageous diagnosis of the human condition. This is the first noble truth, the truth of suffering, or in the ancient Pali language, the truth of dukkha. Now, the word suffering is a heavy one. It conjures images of immense pain and despair, and while dukkha certainly includes that, its meaning is far more subtle, more pervasive, and more intimately familiar to us all. To translate dukkha merely as suffering is like describing the entire ocean by showing a single, crashing wave. The truth is, dukkha is not just the wave. It is also the constant, subtle, powerful undertow. Imagine riding in a cart where one of the wheels is just slightly off its axle. On a perfectly smooth road, you might not even notice. But most of life is not a perfectly smooth road. With every small bump, with every turn, there is a subtle friction, a slight jarring, a quiet, persistent vibration that prevents the ride from ever being truly smooth, truly restful. That is dukkha. It is the background hum of unsatisfactoriness, the feeling that something is not quite right, the deep-seated knowledge that even in our most joyful moments, things are not entirely secure. It is the friction between our desire for permanence and the relentless reality of change. The Buddha, as the great physician, identified three distinct forms of this friction, three layers of dukkha that we all experience. The first is the most obvious, the one we all recognize as pain. It is called dukkha dukkha, the suffering of suffering. This is the raw, undeniable pain of life. It's the piercing throb of a migraine, the sharp sting of a harsh word, the hollow ache in your chest when you lose someone you love. It's the anxiety that knots your stomach, the frustration of failure, the despair of loneliness. It is the pain of a body that gets sick, gets injured, and grows old. This is the Mui Ten Do Tien, the first arrow we spoke of earlier. It is the unavoidable pain that comes with having a human body and a human heart. We do not need much convincing of its existence. We know it intimately. It is the scraped knee of childhood, the broken heart of youth, the weary bones of old age. This is the surface level of dukkha, clear and sharp. But the physician's diagnosis goes deeper. The second type is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is a far more subtle poison, and it hides within our most beautiful experiences. It is the pain that comes from the fact that nothing lasts. Think of the most perfect day you have ever had. The sun was warm, the company was joyful, your heart was full. But in the very fabric of that joy, was there not a tiny quiet thread of sadness, the knowledge that this moment too would pass? That is viparinama dukkha. It is the bitterness that lingers at the end of a sweet taste. It is the beautiful flower that we know will wilt. It is the love that we hold so tightly, knowing that one day, in some way, it will change or be lost. We spend our lives chasing pleasant experiences, collecting happy moments, building lives of comfort and security. And yet, this very effort is a source of suffering, because life is a flowing river, not a static monument. Trying to hold on to happiness is like trying to cup water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips through your fingers. The loss of a job, the end of a relationship, the fading of youth and beauty. All of these are sources of profound pain, not just because of the loss itself, but because they reveal the fragility of the happiness we had built upon them. This form of dukkha teaches us that our peace cannot be dependent on external conditions, because all conditions are, by their very nature, impermanent. This leads us to the third and most profound level of the diagnosis, sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the deepest and most subtle friction of all. It is the baseline unsatisfactoriness that comes from simply being a self in the world. What is this self? According to the Buddha's insight, it is not a solid, permanent thing. It is a temporary gathering of processes, a collection of a body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness, all constantly changing, all dependent on countless other factors. Sankhara dukkha is the inherent stress and vulnerability of this constructed self. It is the low-grade, chronic stress of having to maintain this identity, to defend it, to feed it, to satisfy its endless wants. It is the feeling of being a precarious assembly, a complex machine that is always on the verge of breaking down, simply because that is its nature. It is the feeling you have when you are trying to build a sandcastle as the tide is coming in. No matter how beautiful, no matter how elaborate, you know its existence is conditional, temporary, and ultimately not within your control. This is the background anxiety of being alive. It is not tied to a specific event of pain or change, but to the very nature of our existence as impermanent, interdependent beings who believe themselves to be permanent and independent. This threefold diagnosis was not born from intellectual speculation. It was born from direct, compassionate observation. The story of the man who would become the Buddha, Prince Siddhartha, is the ultimate testament to this. He lived a life engineered to eliminate the first kind of suffering. He was surrounded by beauty, luxury, and pleasure. His father, the king, shielded him from any sight of pain or decay. Yet, the prince felt a deep, unspoken unease, the subtle hum of sankhara dukkha. He had everything a person could want, and yet, he was not truly at peace. The wheel of his cart was still misaligned. His gilded cage, no matter how comfortable, was still a cage. Driven by this feeling, he ventured outside the palace walls. There, for the first time, he encountered what his father had hidden from him: an old man, a sick man, and a corpse. In these sights, he saw the raw truth of dukkha, the undeniable suffering of life. But more than that, he saw viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. He realized that the youth, health, and life he took for granted were not permanent possessions, but temporary loans. This profound insight shattered his illusion of security. It was a direct confrontation with the fundamental, conditioned nature of his own existence. The crucial part of this story is what Siddhartha did next. He did not run back to the palace to distract himself with more pleasure. He did not fall into despair. He did not curse the gods. He looked. He sat with the truth. He acknowledged it fully. His journey to enlightenment did not begin with a rejection of suffering, but with a full, brave, and compassionate acceptance of its reality. This is the power of the first noble truth. It is not a pessimistic statement. It is a liberating one. To finally name the unease that has haunted you your whole life is an act of supreme courage. It's the moment a patient, after years of mysterious symptoms, finally receives a clear diagnosis. In that moment, fear of the unknown is replaced by the possibility of a cure. By acknowledging dukkha, we stop fighting a nameless ghost. We stop blaming ourselves for feeling this inherent friction. We realize we are not alone. This is not a personal failure, but a universal condition of existence. It is the shared ground upon which all of us stand. And it is only from this shared ground, this place of honest and courageous diagnosis, that we can begin to ask the next vital question, the question that the great physician himself asked. If this is the illness, what is its cause? This question shifts us from simply experiencing pain to investigating its origin, leading us directly to the wisdom of the second noble truth and the profound lesson of the second arrow. Having acknowledged the reality of dukkha, the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness that touches all of our lives, a wise person naturally asks the next question. The great physician has diagnosed the illness. Now we must understand its cause. Why do we suffer? And more importantly, why do we often suffer so intensely, so much more than an event itself seems to warrant? The Buddha's answer to this is one of his most practical and transformative teachings, a parable that serves as a master key for unlocking our own patterns of pain. It is the parable of the second arrow. Imagine a person walking through a forest. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, an arrow flies through the air and strikes them in the arm. It is painful, shocking, and real. The sharp point pierces the skin, and there is an immediate, unavoidable sensation of pain. This, the Buddha explained, is the first arrow. The first arrow is an inevitable part of life. It is the diagnosis of a serious illness, the unexpected loss of a job, the betrayal of a friend, the sharp criticism from a loved one. It is the headache that ruins your plans, the car that breaks down, the flight that gets canceled. These are the objective difficulties of the world, the painful events that are, to a large extent, beyond our control. They are the price of admission for being alive. No amount of meditation, no amount of positive thinking can create a life that is entirely free from these first arrows. They will come. They strike, and there is a sting. But then, the Buddha asks, what does this person do next? An unwise person, struck by the first arrow, immediately takes a second arrow from their own quiver and shoots it into the very same wound. This second arrow is our reaction to the first. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. The first arrow was the physical sensation of being struck. The second arrow is the mental commentary. Why me? This is so unfair. I can't believe this happened. This always happens to me. I have the worst luck. My life is ruined. I can't handle this pain. It is the torrent of blame, of self-pity, of rage, of fear, and of despair that we launch upon ourselves. The pain of the first arrow was physical, localized, and real. But the suffering created by the second arrow is mental, emotional, and it can be limitless. It can echo for days, weeks, even years, long after the original wound has healed. Let us bring this out of the ancient forest and into our daily lives. You are driving to an important meeting and you get stuck in a massive traffic jam. The line of cars is not moving. That is the first arrow. It is a fact. It is an inconvenience. The initial feeling might be a slight clench of frustration. Now, what happens next? For many of us, the second arrow is launched almost instantly. The grip on the steering wheel tightens. The jaw clenches. The internal monologue explodes. This is a nightmare. I'm going to be late. My boss is going to be furious. I'll lose the contract. Why didn't I leave earlier? This city is incompetent. Look at that idiot trying to cut in. My whole day, maybe my whole week, is ruined. Your heart rate increases. Stress hormones flood your system. The initial inconvenience of being stationary has now metastasized into a full-blown crisis of anger and anxiety. The suffering you are experiencing is no longer coming from the traffic jam itself. The traffic is just sitting there. The suffering is coming from the second, third, fourth, and fifth arrows you are relentlessly firing into your own mind. The first arrow wounded you with inconvenience. The second arrow is poisoning you with rage and stress. The first arrow was an external event. The second arrow is an internal production, scripted, directed, and starring you. This is a revolutionary insight. It reveals that the vast majority of our suffering in life is not caused by the events that happen to us, but by our reaction to those events. The pain of life is inevitable, but the suffering is optional. This second arrow is born from our deeply conditioned habits of mind, particularly aversion and clinging. We have a powerful aversion to unpleasant experiences, so when the first arrow of pain strikes, we resist it fiercely. We want reality to be other than it is. This resistance, this mental no, is the second arrow. We also cling desperately to our plans, our expectations, and our sense of control. When the traffic jam shatters our plan of arriving on time, our clinging to that plan becomes the fuel for our rage. So, how do we stop this self-inflicted torment? How do we learn to leave the second arrow in the quiver? The answer lies in the space between the arrows. Through the practice of mindfulness, of gentle, non-judgmental awareness, we can begin to create a pause. When the first arrow strikes the critical email, the pang of loneliness, the physical pain or automatic, conditioned response is to immediately react. But with practice, we can learn to simply notice. We can feel the sting of the first arrow without immediately launching the story. For a moment, we can just be with the raw sensation. Ah, there is a feeling of tightness in my chest. There is heat in my face. There is a thought of anger arising. We observe it as we would observe a cloud passing in the sky. We don't have to become the cloud. We don't have to believe the storm. In this sacred pause, we find our freedom. The pause may only be a split second at first, but in that split second, a choice becomes available that was not there before. We are no longer on autopilot. We can see the second arrow in our hand. We can feel the tension in the bowstring of our mind. And we have the choice to gently, with compassion for our own pain, put the arrow down. We can choose to meet the pain of the first arrow with softness rather than with resistance. We can choose to bring curiosity to our discomfort instead of judgment. This does not mean we become passive or emotionless. The pain is still there. But we are no longer amplifying it 100-fold. We are no longer adding the poison of our own reaction to the initial wound. This redefines our understanding of strength. True strength is not the ability to withstand an infinite number of second arrows. It is not about gritting your teeth and enduring the self-created storm of rage and despair. True strength, true resilience, is the wisdom and courage to not shoot the second arrow in the first place. It is the quiet power of choosing a compassionate, mindful response over a conditioned, blind reaction. This teaching is one of the most empowering in all of Buddhist thought. It takes us out of the role of a passive victim of circumstance and places the key to our own well-being back into our hands. We cannot control the winds of life, and we cannot stop all the first arrows, but the second arrow is always, always our own. Our freedom is not found in a life without pain, but in the space we create and how we relate to that pain. Realizing this, we must then ask a deeper question. Why are we so quick to fire that second arrow? What is the deep-seated pattern in us that so fiercely resists reality as it is? This investigation leads us directly to one of the most fundamental laws of the universe, a truth that our minds are constantly fighting against. It is the truth of impermanence, the universal law of change, known in Buddhism as anicca. Our desperate struggle to find solid ground in a world that is forever flowing is the ultimate source of the tension in our bow. We have seen that our deepest suffering often comes not from life's painful events, but from the second arrow of our own reaction. We fire this arrow because reality has failed to meet our expectations. A first arrow strikes, shattering our sense of how things should be, and we resist that shattering with all our might. But what is this illusion that is being shattered? What is the fundamental expectation that causes us so much pain when it is broken? The wisdom of the Buddha points to a single, universal truth that we spend our entire lives trying to deny. It is the truth of anicca, the Pali word for impermanence. Anicca is the law that states that everything, without exception, is in a constant state of flux. Nothing is permanent, nothing is fixed, nothing stays the same. To the mind that craves security and control, this can sound like a terrifying doctrine, a cosmic death sentence. But to the heart that seeks freedom, this truth, when fully understood, is the very key that unlocks the prison door. It is not a pessimistic curse, but a liberating reality. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." This is a perfect window into the heart of anicca. Imagine standing on the bank of a great river. The water flows ceaselessly before you. You decide to step in. The cool water swirls around your ankles. A moment later, you step out and then step back in. Is it the same river? The water that just touched you is now downstream, already miles away, and new water has taken its place. The silt on the riverbed has shifted. A leaf has floated by. The light reflecting on the surface has changed. It is, quite literally, not the same river. The Buddhist insight deepens this realization. It is not just the river that has changed in that single moment. You have changed, too. In that brief second, millions of cells in your body have died and been replaced. A new thought has flickered through your mind. Your mood may have shifted imperceptibly. The memory of the first step is now part of you in the second. The person who steps into the river the second time is not the same person who stepped in the first. This is the nature of reality. It is not a collection of solid, static nouns, but a dynamic, interconnected dance of processes. We live in a universe of verbs. The world is not a photograph, it is a film. And yet, our minds are constantly trying to freeze the frame. We try to build our homes, our identities, and our happiness on the banks of this flowing river, pretending that the ground beneath us is solid and eternal. And then we are shocked and devastated when the river inevitably changes its course, when the waters rise, when the bank erodes. This fight against the fundamental nature of reality is the source of so much of our self-inflicted suffering. Look at how this manifests in our lives. We cling to youth and health. Our culture is obsessed with fighting the natural process of aging. We see wrinkles and gray hair not as signs of a life lived, but as enemies to be defeated. We treat illness as a personal failure, a betrayal by our bodies, rather than an inevitable part of the human condition. This constant battle against the biological imperative of change creates a deep-seated anxiety, a fear of our own bodies. We are at war with the very process that governs our existence. We cling to possessions and achievements. We buy the beautiful car, and for a moment, it brings us joy. But then comes the first scratch, the first dent, and we suffer. Why? Because the scratch violated our unspoken demand that the car remain perfect and new forever. We build the perfect home, but then the roof leaks, the paint fades, and it requires constant maintenance. We achieve a certain status at work, a position of respect, and we cling to it, living in quiet fear of a younger colleague, a changing market, a corporate restructuring. We invest these temporary, changing things with the power to give us lasting happiness, and in doing so, we set ourselves up for an endless cycle of desire and disappointment. Most poignantly, we cling to relationships and to moments. This is not to say that we should not love deeply, but Buddhist wisdom points to a subtle distinction between love and clinging. Love is wishing for the well-being of another. Clinging is wishing for them to remain as they are, to always be there for us, to meet our needs in a specific way, to never change. We try to fossilize other people, and we suffer when they inevitably grow and evolve in ways we didn't expect. We do the same with moments. We experience a moment of pure joy, a family vacation, a perfect sunset, a child's laughter, and the mind immediately says, "This is it. I want this to last forever." This very thought, this desire to freeze time, poisons the present. It introduces the fear of the moment's end, right in the middle of the moment itself. By refusing to accept the transient, fleeting beauty of the moment, we fail to fully inhabit it. The wisdom of Anicca invites us to turn this lens of impermanence inward, to observe the river of our own mind. Think of a powerful emotion, like anger or sadness. When we are caught in its grip, it feels absolute. It feels like it will last forever. It colonizes our entire being, and we believe its story. I am an angry person, or I will always be sad. This belief is what fuels the second arrow. But if we can pause, breathe, and simply observe the emotion as a manifestation of Anicca, its power begins to wane. We can say to ourselves, "This is a storm of anger passing through the sky of my mind." It is not the sky itself. It has arisen due to causes and conditions, and it will pass away when those conditions change. This is not suppression, it is wisdom. It is recognizing that our inner world, like the outer world, is a constantly flowing stream. Feelings come, they stay for a while, and they go. Thoughts appear out of nowhere, and they vanish just as quickly. This understanding is the antidote to despair. If everything were permanent, a mistake would define you forever. A period of grief would be a life sentence. A state of depression would be a permanent prison. The law of impermanence is what allows for healing. It is what allows for growth, for forgiveness, for learning. It is the possibility of a new day, and what is true for pain is also true for joy. When we truly understand that joy is impermanent, we don't grasp at it with a desperate, fearful clinging. Instead, we savor it more completely. We appreciate its precious, fleeting nature. We can drink it in fully, without the anxiety of trying to make it last forever, just as we can appreciate the stunning beauty of a cherry blossom, knowing it will only be here for a week. There is a story of a great Zen master who would, as a form of meditation, draw a large, beautiful, and intricate circle on the sand of the beach. He would pour all of his attention and artistry into it. Then, he would sit and watch as the tide came in, as the waves gently began to lap at the edges, slowly, inevitably washing his creation away until nothing was left but smooth, wet sand. He did this without the slightest distress. He appreciated the beauty of the creation, and he appreciated the beauty of its dissolution. He was in harmony with the river of reality. He was not at war with the waves. This is the peace that comes from embracing Anicca. It is the art of letting go, not because we don't care, but because we understand. It is realizing that security is not found in building a fortress on the riverbank, but in learning how to build a boat. This constant battle we wage against the river of change, this desperate grasping for solid ground in a world of flux, is a core feature of the untrained mind. This resistance, this clinging, has a name in the Buddhist teaching. It is called tanha, which can be translated as thirst, craving, or desire. Having seen how our fight against the flow of impermanence causes our suffering, we must now look directly at the nature of the fist that is always trying to clutch the water. We must explore the prison that this clinging creates. We stand on the banks of the river of impermanence, Anicca, and we understand that its nature is to flow. And yet, we suffer. We suffer because, despite knowing the water can never be held, we are constantly reaching in, trying to grasp it, trying to possess it. This grasping, this insatiable thirst to scoop up the river of experience and hold it as our own, has a name. It is the heart of the Buddha's second noble truth, the origin of our suffering. The name is tanha. Tanha is a Pali word that is often translated as craving or desire, but its feeling is closer to a deep, burning, and unquenchable thirst. It is the engine of our restlessness, the force that keeps us striving, wanting, and running. It is the architect of the second arrow, the tension in the bowstring that sends our own reactions flying into our wounds. To understand tanha is to understand the very mechanism of our own self-made prisons. There is a story that perfectly illustrates how tanha operates. In Southeast Asia, hunters have a clever method for trapping monkeys. They take a coconut or a gourd and drill a small hole in it, just large enough for a monkey to squeeze its open hand through. They place some rice or a sweet nut inside and chain the coconut to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along. It smells the treat, reaches its hand inside, and grasps the prize. But now, with its hand clenched into a fist around the rice, it cannot pull its hand out. The hole is too small for its fist. The monkey pulls and screeches. It fights and struggles, growing more and more frantic. But it is trapped. Now, here is the crucial insight. The monkey is not being held by the coconut. It is not being held by the hunter. The monkey is being held by its own fist, by its own desperate, white-knuckled clinging to the prize. At any moment, it could simply open its hand, let go of the rice, and be free. But its craving, its tanha, is so powerful that it cannot bring itself to release its grip, even as the hunters approach. In so many ways, we are that monkey. We are holding on to things that are trapping you, say, past resentment, a future ambition, a relationship that no longer serves us, a self-image we are desperate to maintain. We feel trapped by our circumstances, but so often, the bars of our cage are forged from our own clinging. Freedom is just one moment of letting go away, but we cannot bring ourselves to open our hand. The Buddha identified 3 distinct faces of this powerful thirst. 3 ways this clinging manifests in our lives. The first and most familiar is kamatana, the thirst for sense pleasure. This is the craving for experiences that are pleasing to our 6th sense: a delicious taste, a beautiful sight, a pleasant sound, a fragrant smell, a comforting touch, and even a pleasing thought or idea. It is the desire for another slice of cake, the urge to binge-watch another episode, the relentless scrolling through social media for the next little hit of validation, the constant seeking of comfort, entertainment, and stimulation. The problem is not that these things are inherently bad. The problem, as we saw with Annika, is that they are all impermanent. The pleasure of the cake lasts only a moment. The thrill of the new purchase fades. The validation from a like is fleeting. And as soon as the pleasure subsides, the thirst returns, often demanding a bigger, better, more intense experience to achieve the same level of satisfaction. This is the hedonic treadmill. We run and run, chasing pleasure after pleasure, but our baseline of happiness never actually changes. We are the monkey, forever grabbing for more rice, never truly satisfied. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhavatana, the thirst for becoming, for existence. This is not just a craving for a fleeting pleasure. It is a craving to be someone, to solidify our identity, to carve our name into the world and make it last forever. It is the deep drive to be successful, to be respected, to be seen as intelligent or beautiful or powerful. It is the ambition that whispers, "When I get that promotion, then I will be happy." It is the desire that says, "If I can just find the perfect partner, then my life will be complete." It is the deep yearning for a legacy, for our story to continue, for some part of us to be permanent. This thirst fuels our anxieties about our status, our reputation, and our future. We are constantly striving to become an idealized version of ourselves, and so we can never rest in the peace of who we are right now. We are clinging to a future self that does not exist, and so we are forever dissatisfied with the present self that does. It is the craving to be a perfect, permanent sandcastle, even as the tide of impermanence is constantly washing at our feet. The third form of thirst is perhaps the most paradoxical. It is vibhavatanha, the thirst for non-existence, for annihilation. If bhavatana is the pull towards existence, vibhavatana is the violent push away from it. It is the craving to get rid of a painful feeling, a difficult situation, or a part of ourselves that we hate. When we are faced with intense shame, failure, grief, or physical pain, the mind screams, "I want this to stop. I can't stand this." That desperate get it away from me energy is vibhavatanha. It is the force behind our addictions, as we seek to numb our pain with substances or behaviors. It is the driver of our procrastination, as we avoid difficult tasks to avoid the feeling of discomfort. At its most extreme, this thirst for annihilation manifests as suicidal thoughts, the desire to destroy the self in order to destroy its unbearable pain. It seems like the opposite of craving, but it is a thirst nonetheless. It is a desperate craving for a different reality, a violent rejection of the present moment. It is another form of being at war with the river, trying to force it to stop flowing. Now, a crucial question arises. Is all desire bad? Are we supposed to become passionless robots? The answer is a definitive no. The Buddhist path makes a vital distinction between tanha, unwholesome craving, and chanda, wholesome desire or aspiration. Chanda is the desire to grow, to learn, to be kind, to help others, to awaken. It is the energy that motivates you to meditate, to practice compassion, to walk this path of healing. So what is the difference? The difference lies in the clinging, in the attachment to the outcome. Aspiration is about the process. Clinging is about the prize. Imagine you aspire to be a good gardener. You enjoy the wholesome process of preparing the soil, planting the seeds, watering, and tending to the plants. This is chanda. If a sudden storm destroys some of your work, you feel a natural disappointment of first arrow, but you are not destroyed. You learn from the experience, and you continue to cultivate your garden. Now imagine your entire identity and self-worth are tied to having the perfect garden. This is tanha. Every weed, every insect, every unexpected frost is a source of intense suffering. A second arrow. You are no longer gardening. You are fighting a war against reality. Aspiration is a sail that catches the wind of life. Tanha is a rigid chain that tries to anchor you to one spot on the riverbed. How then do we loosen the grip of this fist? How does the monkey learn to open its hand? The practice begins, as always, with mindfulness. We don't start by trying to forcibly renounce our desires. We start by simply seeing them. When a craving arises, instead of automatically acting on it or condemning it, we just notice it. Ah, there is wanting. There is a desire for that food. There is a desire for praise. We feel the energy of it in our body, the restlessness, the tension. In the simple, non-judgmental act of seeing our tanha, we create a space around it. We are no longer possessed by it. We are the one who is observing it. From that space of awareness, we can investigate with wisdom. We can gently ask ourselves, what is this really about? What do I believe this will give me? Is holding on to this truly serving my long-term peace? We begin to see the trap for what it is. We see the fist, and we realize with dawning clarity that we have the power to open it. This grasping, this pulling towards, this thirst for more, is the primary engine of our suffering. But it is only one side of a coin. The mind that clings so desperately to pleasure is the same mind that pushes so fiercely against pain. The energy of I must have it is inextricably linked to the energy of I must get rid of it. To fully understand the nature of our prison, we must now turn and face its other wall. We must examine the other face of tanha, the bitter taste of its twin brother. We must explore the poison of aversion. If the thirst of tanha is the desperate pull towards what we want, its inseparable twin is the violent push away from what we don't. They are two sides of the same restless coin, two compulsions born from the same fundamental discontent. This second force is known in the Buddhist teachings as dvesha or dosa. It can be translated as aversion, ill will, hatred, or anger. It is the mind's reflexive, visceral no to the unfolding of reality. If tanha is the engine of our wanting, dvesha is the engine of our resistance. It is the hot, reactive energy that arises when the world does not conform to our desires, when life presents us with the unpleasant, the unwanted, and the painful. And just like its twin, it is a primary source of our deepest suffering, a poison that we willingly drink, believing it will harm someone else. The Buddha used a powerful simile to describe the action of anger. He said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Stop for a moment and feel the truth of this. Recall the last time you were truly angry. Recall the feeling in your body, the searing heat in your chest and face, the pounding of your heart, the clenching of your jaw and fists. Recall the thoughts in your mind, replaying the perceived offense over and over again, a frantic, obsessive loop of blame and justification. In that state, who is truly suffering? The person you are angry with might be miles away, sleeping soundly, completely unaware of the turmoil you are in. But you are there, marinating in your own stress hormones, setting your own nervous system on fire. You are holding the hot coal, and it is burning you, and only you. Dvesha is a weapon that, first and foremost, wounds the one who wields it. This poison of aversion presents itself in many forms, wearing many different masks, from the obvious to the deceptively subtle. Its most dramatic mask is that of explosive rage. This is the aversion that slams doors, shouts insults, and perpetuates violence. It is a wildfire that burns with incredible speed and intensity, leaving devastation in its wake, incinerating connection and trust. It is the most visible form of the hot coal, a spectacular display of self-inflicted harm that also scorches those around us. A far more common, and perhaps more insidious, mask is that of resentment and the holding of grudges. This is the slow burn of aversion. It is anger turned inward, chilled, and stored for months or even years. To hold a grudge is to carry that hot coal with you everywhere you go, carefully wrapped in the cloth of your justifications. It becomes a heavy, toxic stone in the backpack of your mind, weighing you down, poisoning your present moments with the bitterness of the past. It is the act of re-drinking the poison every single day, while hoping, somehow, that the other person will be the one to get sick. It is a prison we build for ourselves, with bars made of old stories, and a lock forged from our own refusal to let go. Then there is the more socially acceptable mask of aversion, judgment, and criticism. This is the intellectualized form of dvesha. It is the constant habit of scanning the world, other people, and ourselves for flaws. It is the voice of the inner critic, the one that whispers, "They shouldn't have done that. That's not good enough. What a fool." This constant stream of negativity creates a subtle but pervasive sense of separation. It pushes the world away by deeming it inadequate. It elevates us by putting others down. It feels sophisticated, even intelligent, but at its root, it is still the energy of no, a resistance to the beautiful, messy imperfection of life and of people. Every judgment is a small, cold stone we add to the wall between ourselves and the world. This leads to a profound insight. Aversion is actually a hidden form of clinging. This seems like a contradiction, but it is essential to understand. When we are consumed with hatred for a person or a situation, we are not clinging to the unpleasant thing itself. We are, however, fiercely clinging to our idea of how things should be. We are clinging to our own set of rules for the universe. When someone insults you, the anger that arises is fueled by your clinging to the desire to be respected. When you are sick, the aversion you feel is born from your clinging to the state of being healthy. Dvesha is the violent friction that occurs when the raw, untamed reality of the present moment scrapes against our rigid, idealized expectations. The suffering does not come from the reality, it comes from our clinging to the expectation. It is yet another way the mind's desire for permanence and control wages a painful, losing war against the flowing river of Anika. The Buddha offered a powerful antidote to this poison in a famous encounter. One day, as he was teaching, a man from a high caste, a Brahmin, came up to him and began to insult him. He hurled curses and abuse, furious that the Buddha's teachings were challenging the established social order. The Buddha stood there, listening with a calm and patient presence. He did not argue, he did not defend himself. He simply received the man's tirade with a quiet, unwavering equanimity. The Brahmin became even more enraged by this lack of reaction, and he continued to shout until he was exhausted and hoarse. When the man finally fell silent, breathing heavily, the Buddha spoke softly. He asked, "Venerable sir, do you sometimes have guests visit you in your home?" The man, taken aback, nodded. "And do you prepare gifts for them, food and drink?" the Buddha asked. "Yes, of course," the Brahmin replied. "And what if," the Buddha continued, "your guest refuses to accept the gift you have prepared? To whom does that gift then belong?" The man thought for a moment and said, "Well, if they do not take it, it would still belong to me." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Exactly so. For the last hour, you have offered me the gift of your anger, your insults, and your ill will. I have chosen not to accept it." This story is a profound teaching on freedom. It shows us that we have a choice. We do not have to accept the negativity that others direct towards us. We do not have to pick up the hot coal that someone else is trying to hand to us. When we react with anger to someone else's anger, we are accepting their gift. We are allowing their internal state to become our internal state. But through mindfulness, we can learn to pause. We can see the gift being offered, and we can politely decline. This is not weakness, it is supreme strength. It is the strength to protect your own inner peace, to refuse to let your well-being be held hostage by the words or actions of another. The practice, then, is not to suppress our anger, for that is just another form of aversion, nor is it to recklessly act it out. The practice is to meet the energy of aversion with mindful, compassionate awareness. When you feel anger arise, turn towards it. Feel the heat in your body, the tension in your shoulders, the raw, powerful energy of it. See it for what it is. Just energy. A powerful weather pattern passing through the sky of your awareness. By observing it without judgment, you stop feeding it the stories that keep it alive. You unhook yourself from its powerful current. You let the hot coal cool down in the spaciousness of your own attention without ever having to throw it. This pulling of tanha and this pushing of devesha, this craving and this aversion, are the two great forces that keep us spinning on the wheel of suffering. They seem like opposites, but they are both born from one single, fundamental assumption, one great illusion. They are both defense mechanisms for a central character in all of our stories. The self, the me, the I that feels it needs to be protected, gratified, and preserved at all costs. To truly understand the root of our suffering and find a deeper freedom, we must now turn the lens of our investigation onto this central character. Is this solid, separate self that we assume ourselves to be really what it appears to be? This question leads us to the heart of the Buddha's wisdom, to one of the most liberating and challenging teachings of all, the truth of anatta or no self. We have journeyed into the very heart of our restlessness. We have seen the desperate pull of craving, tanha, which promises a happiness that never quite arrives. We have felt the fiery push of aversion, vesha, which wages a painful and futile war against reality. But now we must ask the most fundamental question of all. Who exactly is the one doing all this craving and all this pushing away? Who is this central character at the heart of every drama, every story of desire and disappointment, of pride and of pain? The assumed answer is always, simply, me. It is I who wants this. It is I who hates that. This I, this sense of self, is the protagonist we spend our entire lives promoting, protecting, and defending. It is the king of our inner kingdom. But the Buddha, in his most profound and revolutionary teaching, asks us to do something radical. He asks us to turn the light of our investigation onto the king himself. He asks us to see if this solid, continuous, independent self we take for granted can actually be found. This investigation leads to the truth of anatta, or no self. This is not a teaching of annihilation, that you do not exist. It is a liberating discovery that you are infinitely more vast, more open, and more mysterious than the small, fixed character you have always imagined yourself to be. To begin this investigation, let us consider a story of a famous encounter that took place over 2,000 years ago between a Greek king, Milinda, and a Buddhist sage named Nagasena. King Milinda, a man of sharp intellect, wished to test the sage's wisdom. He arrived at the monastery and asked to see Nagasena. The sage approached, and the king asked his name. The sage replied that he was known as Nagasena, but that this was merely a convenient name, a designation, for there was no permanent, individual person to be found. The king, a skilled debater, immediately challenged him. A most interesting claim, he said. If there is no person, then who is it that wears these robes? Who eats, sleeps, and studies the teachings? Is this Nagasena in your head? Is it your hair? Is it your body? Is it your mind? To each question, Nagasena calmly replied, "No, your majesty." After a few moments, the sage, with a gentle smile, turned the question back on the king. "Your majesty, you are a king. You are accustomed to comfort. How did you arrive here today? Did you walk?" "Certainly not," the king replied. "I came in my royal chariot." "Excellent," said Nagasena. "Then please your majesty tell me, what is this chariot? Is it the wheels?" "No," said the king. "Is it the axle, the frame, the yoke, the reins?" With each question, the king was forced to answer number. Then, Nagasena pressed, "Is the chariot all of these parts combined?" "No, venerable sir," the king admitted. "Then is it something separate from all of these parts?" "Number," the sage then declared. "Chariot is simply the convenient name, the designation we give, when all these parts are assembled and working together. In an ultimate sense, there is no chariot to be found, only the components that give rise to the idea of one." He paused and then looked at the king. "It is the same with Nagasena. It is the name we give to this temporary assembly of body and mind. This powerful story reveals the heart of anatta. The self we believe in so strongly is not a solid entity, but a convention, a name for an assembly of changing parts." The Buddha analyzed this psychophysical process we call a person and broke it down into 5 categories, known as the 5 aggregates or skandhas. These are the parts of our chariot. The first is form, or rupa. This is our physical body, flesh, bone, blood, and breath. It is the material aspect of our existence. Is this body me? It seems so at first, but this body is in a constant state of flux, just like the river of Anika. It changes from infancy to old age. It gets sick. It gets injured. Cells are dying and being replaced constantly. We say, "my hand," or "my leg," not "I am hand," or "I am leg." We relate to it as a possession, something we have, not something we are. So, we are not our body. The second is feeling, or vedana. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These are categorized into 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. The pleasant taste of food, the unpleasant sting of a bee, the neutral feeling of your clothes against your skin. These feelings are completely dependent on external conditions, and they are incredibly fleeting. Are you your feelings? If so, who are you when a pleasant feeling is replaced by an unpleasant one? You would be a different person from moment to moment. Feelings are too transient and unreliable to be a stable self. The third is perception, or sana. This is the faculty that recognizes, identifies, and labels our experience. It's the process that sees a particular shape and collection of colors and labels it tree. It hears a sound and labels it music. Our perceptions are conditioned by our memory, our culture, our language, and our personal history. 2 people can look at the same event and perceive it in completely different ways. Perception is a mental function, a process of interpretation. It is not a core identity. The fourth is mental formations, or sankhara. This is a very broad and important category. It includes all of our volitional activities, our habits, biases, opinions, beliefs, moods, intentions, and all of our discursive thoughts. It is the storyteller in our mind, the part that worries about the future, ruminates on the past, and judges the present. This is the part that most of us identify with as me. But are you your thoughts? Thoughts arise and pass away in an endless, chaotic stream. One moment a thought of kindness arises, the next, a thought of irritation. If you were your thoughts, you would be 1,000 different people every day. Furthermore, through mindfulness, you can observe your thoughts. The observer is never the observed. You are the one who is aware of the thoughts, so you cannot be the thoughts themselves. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is not some grand, all-encompassing consciousness, but the simple faculty of awareness that arises at each of the 6 sense dorsi: consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness, and so on. It is like the light from a projector. It illuminates the film, but it is not the film itself. Consciousness is completely dependent on an object. There cannot be seeing without something seen, or hearing without something heard. It arises and passes away with every single moment of experience, making it the most fleeting of all the aggregates. So, where is the self? We have taken the chariot apart, piece by piece, and we cannot find a chariot. We have looked at the body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness, and we cannot find a solid, independent me. Anatta is the realization that we are not a thing, but a process. We are not a noun, but a verb. We are not a sandcastle, we are the waves in the sand, constantly interacting. Why is this realization so profoundly liberating? Because if there is no fixed, solid self, then who is it that is being insulted? Who is it that is failing? Who is it that is growing old? The target for life's first arrows becomes transparent. The sting of criticism, the pain of failure, the fear of loss, they still happen, but they no longer land on a solid, vulnerable ego. They pass through an open, spacious awareness. The desperate neediness of tanha begins to relax because there is no empty self that needs to be constantly filled up. The fiery heat of devesha begins to cool because there is no fragile self that needs to be defended. The fear of death loses its terrifying grip because what is it that dies? It is simply the dissolution of this temporary assembly, a process of change that is already happening in every single moment. When we see ourselves not as isolated islands, but as waves in a vast ocean of existence, our sense of separation dissolves, and a natural compassion for all the other waves arises. We see their struggles and their pain as part of the same process as our own. We have now completed our diagnosis. We began with the symptom, the universal experience of dukkha. We identified its causes as the relentless thirst of tanha and the reactive push of dvesha. And now, we have uncovered the root of it all, a case of mistaken identity, the illusion of a solid, separate self, or anatta. This is not a cause for despair. It is not a declaration that you are nothing. It is the liberating news that you are everything in open, flowing, interconnected process, free from the confines of the small self you have always imagined yourself to be. Having so thoroughly investigated the problem, we are now ready to turn our full attention to the path of healing, the journey out of the conceptual prison of the self and into the lived reality of freedom begins with the most simple, profound, and ever-present tool we possess. It is the tool that anchors us in the present moment, where the illusory self has no ground to stand on. The path to liberation begins with the breath. We have taken a profound journey of the intellect. We have stood back and analyzed the anatomy of our own suffering. We have seen the symptom of dukkha, the pervasive unsatisfactoriness. We have diagnosed its causes in the pull of tanha and the push of dvesha, and we have uncovered its deepest root. A fundamental case of mistaken identity we call anatta, the illusion of a solid, separate self. We have taken the chariot apart, piece by piece, and found no permanent driver in the seat. This understanding is vital. It is the map that shows us the way out of the prison. But a map is not the journey. You can study the map of a beautiful country for years, but you will never know the scent of its flowers or the warmth of its sun until you actually set foot on its soil. So now, we must shift from the knowing of the mind to the knowing of the body, from the conceptual to the experiential. How do we step out of the frantic, storytelling mind that creates so much of our suffering? How do we experience, for even a moment, the peace that comes from letting go of the need to be a someone? The path begins with an act of radical simplicity. It begins with a tool you have possessed every moment of your life, a tool that is so humble you have almost certainly overlooked it. It is the bridge between the world of thought and the world of felt reality. The journey begins with your breath. The practice is known as anapanasati, or mindfulness of breathing. It requires no special belief, no complex philosophy, just a willingness to meet yourself, right here, right now, with gentleness and curiosity. Think of your mind as a small boat adrift on a vast and often stormy ocean. The waves are your thoughts, rising and falling in endless succession. The currents are your emotions, pulling you in unpredictable directions. The winds are the pressures and demands of your daily life, gusting and changing without warning. Without an anchor, your little boat is tossed about helplessly. It is carried away by waves of worry about the future, dragged back by currents of regret about the past. It spins in circles of confusion, completely at the mercy of the storm, with no sense of where it is. This is the state of the untrained mind, lost in the chaos of its own making. The breath is your anchor. The practice of mindfulness of breathing is the simple act of dropping that anchor into the deep, calm stillness of the present moment. Dropping the anchor does not mean the storm will stop. This is a crucial point. The waves of thought will still arise. The winds of life will still blow. The practice is not about achieving a perfectly calm sea. The practice is about finding a place of stability within the storm. The anchor doesn't fight the waves. It holds the boat steady, allowing the waves to rise and fall without carrying the boat away. The breath anchors you in the only moment that has ever existed, the only moment you will ever have, the here and now. So, let us drop the anchor together. First, find a posture that embodies both dignity and ease. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, or sit upright in a chair with your feet flat on the ground. The key is to keep your back relatively straight, but not stiff. This posture is not for show. It is a physical expression of the intention you are bringing, the intention to be awake, present, and kind. Allow your hands to rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees. Gently close your eyes, or if you prefer, you can leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze towards the floor. Now, bring your attention to the sensation of your body breathing. You don't need to change your breath in any way. You are not trying to take a deep spiritual breath. You are simply noticing the breath as it already is. Let the body breathe itself. Your only task is to feel it. You might choose to rest your attention at the tip of your nostrils, feeling the subtle coolness of the air as it enters and the slight warmth as it leaves. Or, you might rest your attention on the rise and fall of your chest. Or perhaps you feel the breath most clearly in the gentle expansion and contraction of your abdomen. Choose one of these spots as your primary anchor point and let your awareness rest there, as gently as a butterfly landing on a flower. Sooner or later, and likely sooner, your mind will wander. A thought will arise. What am I going to have for dinner? A memory will pop up. A sound from outside will catch your attention. This is not a mistake. This is not a failure. In fact, this is the most important moment in the entire practice. The wandering of the mind is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is the opportunity to do the practice right. The moment you realize your mind has wandered is a moment of mindfulness itself. When this happens, the instructions are simple and always the same. First, just gently recognize that the mind has wandered. You can even say a soft mental note to yourself, thinking or wandering. Do this without any judgment, without any frustration. Don't be angry with your mind for doing what minds naturally do. Second, you gently release the distraction. You don't need to follow the thought, analyze it, or push it away. Just let it go. And third, you softly and kindly guide your attention back to your anchor, the physical sensation of the breath. That's it. That is the entire practice. You rest your attention on the breath. The mind wanders. You notice. You gently release. You kindly return. Over and over again. Every single time you guide your attention back to the breath, it is like doing a bicep curl for the muscle of your attention. The wandering is not the problem. The wandering is the exercise. Each return is a small victory of presence over distraction, of gentleness over judgment. It is an act of profound compassion for your own busy mind. What is the deeper purpose of this simple act? As you rest with the breath, you begin to experience the truths we have been discussing. When you are fully with the sensation of air moving in and out of your body, where is the story of the self? Where is the I that is worrying, striving, and regretting? In that moment, it recedes. There is just awareness and sensation. You are having a direct, lived experience of anatta. As you stay with the practice, you will notice the tangible benefits. The simple act of focused attention calms the sympathetic nervous system. The storm of anxious thoughts begins to settle. A space of inner quiet begins to open up within you. A master carpenter, before making a long, important cut in a piece of wood, will snap a chalk line to create a perfectly straight guide. Without that line, the cut would be crooked. The breath is our chalk line for the mind. By returning to it again and again, we train the mind to be steady, to be clear. This allows us to see our lives with greater wisdom and to navigate our challenges with more skillful and compassionate choices. The breath is your most loyal friend. It is always with you, from the moment of your birth to the moment of your death. It asks for nothing, and yet it gives you life. It is always in the present moment. You cannot breathe in the past, and you cannot breathe in the future. To be with your breath is to be home, in the here and now. So, be patient. Start with just 5 minutes a day. Be kind to your wandering mind. Dropping the anchor is the first step. Once we have learned to find some stability here, at this single point of the breath, we can then begin to broaden our field of awareness. We can move from this focal point to the entire landscape of our physical being. The body is a rich and complex world of sensation, a place where so many of our emotions and unhealed pains are stored. The next step on our journey is to bring this same gentle, mindful attention to the whole body, learning to listen to its forgotten messages and unlock its hidden wisdom. In our last session, we discovered the profound simplicity of the breath as our anchor. We learned how to drop this anchor into the present moment, allowing the stormy seas of our mind to rage without carrying our boat away. The breath gives us stability. It brings us home. Now that we have found a measure of stillness, a place to rest, we can begin to explore the boat itself. That boat is our body. For most of us in the modern world, the body is something we largely ignore, unless it is in pain or fails to meet our aesthetic demands. We treat it like a machine for carrying our brains from one meeting to another, a vehicle to be fueled with caffeine and pushed to its limits. We have become profoundly disconnected from its inherent wisdom, its subtle language. Yet, the body has a deep intelligence. It is the living archive of our entire life. It remembers everything. The joys, the fears, the unspoken griefs, the chronic stresses, they all live on. Not just as memories in the mind, but as tangible patterns in the body, stored in the form of chronic tension in the shoulders, a persistent knot in the stomach, an ache in the lower back. The body, as they say, keeps the score. The practice we will explore now is a way of learning to read that score. It is an act of deep listening. It is the practice of the body scan. Think of your body as a finely crafted musical instrument, perhaps a beautiful cello. When a musician truly loves their instrument, they don't just play it, they listen to it. Before a performance, they will carefully pluck each string, listening to its tone, feeling its vibration, making subtle adjustments until the entire instrument is in a state of resonant harmony. An instrument that is ignored, left in its case, and never tuned, will inevitably fall out of tune. Its strings will tighten or loosen, and when you finally try to play it, the sound will be dissonant and unpleasant. Our bodies are just like this. When we live exclusively in our heads, ignoring the subtle signals and tensions of our physical form, we fall out of harmony with ourselves. We live in a state of quiet dissonance. The body scan is the gentle, loving act of tuning our own instrument. It is not about forcing the body into some perfect state, but about moving through it with a curious and kind attention, listening to each part, each string, to understand what is truly there. For this practice, it is often best to lie down on your back, on a mat, a rug, or even your bed. If lying down is not comfortable or possible, you can do this sitting in a chair. The key is to be comfortable, warm, and in a position where you can relax without falling asleep, if possible. Allow your arms to rest alongside your body, your legs to be uncrossed. Let yourself be fully supported by the surface beneath you. And when you are ready, gently close your eyes. Begin by bringing your awareness to the simple fact of your body being here. Feel the points of contact between your body and the surface it is resting on. Feel the pull of gravity, the sense of weight and presence. Now, as we did before, bring your awareness to the gentle rhythm of your breathing, feeling the rise and fall of your abdomen. Let this be your home base, the place you can always return to if your mind gets lost. Now, with your next out-breath, imagine sending your awareness all the way down through your body, down your left leg and into the toes of your left foot. You are not trying to think about your toes. You are trying to feel them directly, from the inside out. Bring a gentle, curious attention to this small part of your body. What sensations are here? You might feel a sense of warmth or coolness. You might feel a slight tingling or a sense of contact between the toes. It is also possible that you feel nothing at all, a kind of numbness. If that is your experience, that is perfectly fine. Simply notice the absence of sensation. That too is a form of listening. As you breathe in, imagine the breath flowing all the way down to your toes, filling them with a gentle, oxygenated awareness. As you breathe out, imagine any tension held there softening and flowing out with the breath. Now, slowly, Patiently, begin to expand your awareness. Move from the toes to the sole of your left foot, feeling the arch and the ball of the foot. Then to the heel, feeling its solid contact with the surface beneath you. Continue on to the ankle, the lower leg, the shin, and the calf muscle. Then move your awareness into the left knee, exploring the sensations in the joint, and then up into the large muscles of the thigh, both the front and the back. Just feeling, noticing, without judgment, without needing anything to be different than it is. Now, let go of the left leg and gently shift your entire attention, in the same way, over to the toes of your right foot. And just as before, slowly, methodically, travel with your awareness up through the right foot, the ankle, the lower leg, the knee, and the thigh, bringing the same quality of kind, curious attention to each part. Next, bring your awareness into the entire pelvic region, the hips, the buttocks, the groin. This is an area where we often hold deep-seated tension. Just notice what is here. Breathing in, bringing awareness. Breathing out, inviting softness. From here, let your awareness move into your lower back. For many of us, this is a place of chronic pain or discomfort. The invitation here is not to fight the pain or wish it away. That is the second arrow. The practice is to meet the raw sensation with a soft, spacious attention. Observe its qualities. Is it a sharp pain or a dull ache? Is it hot or cold? Is it constant or does it pulsate? By observing it without resistance, you stop feeding it the fuel of your aversion. Continue upwards into the abdomen, feeling the gentle movement of the breath here, and into the chest. Then bring your awareness to your upper back and your shoulder blades. Let your attention travel down both arms simultaneously, through the upper arms, the elbows, the forearms, and into your hands. Feel the palms of your hands, the back of the hands. Bring your awareness to each finger, one by one, feeling the subtle sensations present there. Now, guide your attention to your neck and throat, another common storage area for stress. See if you can invite a sense of softness here. Let your awareness fill your entire face. Notice the jaw. Is it clenched? Can you let it go, just a little? Feel your lips, your cheeks, your ears. Bring your attention to the small muscles around your eyes and the broad expanse of your forehead. Let any tension here melt away. Finally, let your awareness rest on the very top of your head. And now, for the last few moments, see if you can expand your awareness to include your entire body at once. Feel the whole body as one single, unified field of sensation. Feel it tingling with life, from the tips of your toes to the crown of your head. Feel the whole body breathing, a living, vibrant, interconnected whole. As you practice this regularly, you will notice profound shifts. You will begin to develop a true friendship with your body. You will move from treating it as a thing to be managed, to relating to it as a wise and sensitive companion. You will learn to hear its whispers before they become screams. You will also have a direct, visceral experience of anicca, impermanence. By watching your bodily sensations, you will see for yourself that nothing is solid. The ache in your back is not a single, solid thing. It is a shifting, changing process of sensation. An itch arises, and then it fades. A feeling of warmth spreads, and then it cools. This direct seeing loosens the grip of fear and aversion towards physical experiences. The simple act of shining the light of kind, non-judgmental awareness onto a tense muscle often gives that muscle the permission it needs to finally let go. You are not forcing it to relax. You are creating the conditions for it to release on its own. The body scan is a profound act of coming home. It is a way of inhabiting the full reality of your life, which is always and only happening right here in this physical form. We have now used this practice to become intimate with the landscape of physical sensations. But the body is also the theater where our feelings and emotions play out. A tightening in the chest is what we call anxiety. A warmth spreading through the torso is what we call joy. Our next step on this journey is to turn our mindful lens directly onto these feelings themselves, learning to observe them as they arise from these bodily sensations, without getting lost in their dramatic and often misleading stories. Having learned to come home to the body, to listen to its subtle language through the body scan, we have prepared the ground for the next. crucial stage of our inner exploration. We have become familiar with the landscape of physical sensation. Now, we will turn our attention to the weather that constantly moves across that landscape. This weather is our feelings. In the Buddhist teachings, this is the practice of Vedana, or mindfulness of feelings and feeling tones. This is a practice of profound subtlety and immense power, for it is at the level of feeling that the seeds of our suffering are sown. It is here that the second arrow is typically notched and drawn. Before we begin, it is vital to understand what we mean by feeling. In this context, we are not talking about complex emotions like love, jealousy, or pride. We are going deeper, to the layer beneath those complex stories. Vedana refers to the mind's immediate, pre-verbal, and automatic reaction to any experience. It is the raw data of life, sorted into one of three simple categories: pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. It is the instant the mind tastes an experience and labels it good, bad, or neither. Think of it this way. The physical event of stubbing your toe is a sensation. The immediate, raw, bodily experience of ouch, that raw unpleasantness before any thought arises, that is the feeling tone, the Vedana. The complex story that follows, I'm so clumsy, this is terrible, my day is ruined, is the emotion. We are going to learn to stay with the raw data before the story takes hold. Why is this so important? Because this raw feeling tone is the trigger for the automatic pilot of craving and aversion that governs so much of our lives. When a pleasant feeling tone arises, the taste of sugar, the warmth of the sun, a word of praise, your unexamined, habitual reaction is tanha, or craving. The mind immediately says, more of this. I like this. Don't let this stop. We grasp, we cling, we try to hold on to the pleasant experience, setting ourselves up for suffering when it inevitably changes. When an unpleasant feeling tone arises, a jarring noise, a critical comment, a physical pain or habitual reaction is dvesha, or aversion. The mind immediately says, no, make this go away. I hate this. We push, we resist, we fight against the experience, creating tension and misery. And what about when a neutral feeling tone arises, the sensation of your feet on the floor, the background hum of a refrigerator? Our habitual reaction is often a subtle form of delusion or ignorance. We check out, we get bored. We deem the experience unimportant and immediately start searching for a more pleasant distraction. We are, in essence, sleepwalking through huge portions of our lives. This tricycle of craving, aversion, and ignoring, powered by our reaction to feeling tones, is what keeps us trapped on the wheel of suffering. The practice of mindfulness of feelings is the way we learn to get off the tricycle and simply watch the traffic of life go by. Imagine you are sitting peacefully on the grassy bank of a wide flowing river. This river is the stream of your moment-to-moment experience. The leaves floating on the surface of the river are your feeling tones. Some are beautiful, golden leaves, shimmering in the sun. These are your pleasant feelings. Some are sharp, thorny branches, or clumps of dark mud. These are your unpleasant feelings. And many, perhaps most, are just simple, plain brown leaves, quietly floating by. These are your neutral feelings. Now, our entire life has been spent reacting to these leaves. As soon as we see a golden leaf, we jump into the cold water, frantically trying to catch it and hold on to it, only to have it slip through our fingers. When we see a thorny branch coming towards us, we leap into the river and try to violently push it away, fighting against the current and getting scratched in the process. And when the plain brown leaves float by, we don't even notice them. We turn our backs to the river and look for more exciting entertainment. In all cases, we end up exhausted, wet, and at the complete mercy of the river's current. The practice of Vedana is revolutionary in its simplicity. It is the art of staying on the riverbank. It is the choice to simply sit, watch the leaves arise on the current, note their quality, and watch them float on by. You don't have to do anything about them. You are just an observer, a gentle, curious witness to the flow of your own life. Let us try this now. Begin by settling into your posture and connect with your breath as your anchor. Now, allow your awareness to broaden. Instead of just focusing on the breath, let your awareness become like a wide, receptive net. waiting for any sensation to arise. It could be a sound from outside, a thought, a memory, or a physical sensation like an itch or an ache. As a distinct experience makes itself known, your task is simply to notice the immediate feeling tone that comes with it. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or neither? Once you have detected the feeling tone, you make a soft, silent mental note. Just a simple label. If you notice the comfortable warmth of your hands, before the mind says, "Oh, this is nice, I like this," just notice the raw data, pleasant. And you can note to yourself, pleasant, pleasant. If you notice a sudden ache in your back, before the story of "my bad back is acting up again" begins, just notice the raw feeling tone, unpleasant. And you note, unpleasant, unpleasant. If you are simply aware of the neutral sensation of the air on your skin, you can note, neutral, neutral. The tone of this noting is crucial. It is not a harsh judgment. It is the gentle, objective labeling of a scientist observing data. It is soft, curious, and kind. Let's walk through this. Perhaps you are sitting, and you hear the beautiful sound of a bird singing outside your window. The sound enters your ear. The immediate feeling tone is likely pleasant. Before you get lost in thoughts about the bird, you simply note, pleasant, pleasant. And you watch that pleasant feeling as it lingers and eventually fades. Then, perhaps, a memory of a difficult conversation arises. A knot forms in your stomach. The immediate feeling tone is unpleasant. You simply note, unpleasant, unpleasant. You are not trying to solve the problem or push the memory away. You are just staying with the raw energy of the feeling, meeting it with awareness. You are staying on the riverbank, watching the thorny branch float by. Then, for a long stretch, perhaps you just feel the simple sensation of your body breathing. There's no strong charge either way. This is a neutral feeling tone. The challenge here is to stay present. Can you watch the plain brown leaves with the same gentle curiosity as the golden ones? Can you note, neutral, neutral, without getting bored and drifting away into thought? What this practice does is revolutionary. It systematically dismantles the automatic chain of suffering at its weakest link. The old unconscious chain was, a sensation arises, which creates a feeling tone, which immediately triggers craving or aversion, which then leads to a cascade of suffering. The second arrow, the new, mindful process is, a sensation arises, which creates a feeling tone, which is then met by a moment of mindful noting. That moment of noting creates a sacred pause. It cuts the wire between the trigger and the bomb. In that pause, we have a choice. We are no longer a puppet pulled by the invisible strings of pleasure and pain. We are the one watching the show. This is the birth of true equanimity, or upekkha. Equanimity is not indifference or apathy. It is not a cold, stony heart. It is a spacious, balanced, and wise heart. It is a heart that has the capacity to experience the full, rich, and sometimes painful spectrum of human life without being thrown off balance, without being knocked into the river. By learning to watch our feelings from the stable ground of mindful awareness, we reclaim our inner freedom, moment by moment. These feeling tones, however, are often just the seeds. When left unobserved, they quickly blossom into the much more complex and entangling weeds of our thoughts, our judgments, and our elaborate mental stories. And so, the next natural step in our journey of awakening is to turn the lens of our mindfulness directly onto the storyteller itself, the ceaselessly active, endlessly creative, and profoundly powerful mind. We have explored the landscape of the body and witnessed the raw weather of our feelings. We have seen how a simple feeling tone, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, can arise from a sensation. And if we are not mindful, what happens in the very next moment? A story begins. The mind, our master storyteller and interpreter, takes the raw data of a feeling and immediately begins to weave a narrative around it. An unpleasant feeling becomes a drama of injustice. A pleasant feeling becomes a romance of attachment. A neutral feeling becomes a boring plot that we quickly abandon for a more exciting one. We live almost our entire lives inside these stories, believing each one to be the absolute truth. The practice of mindfulness of mind, or Sitnupassana, is the radical act of waking up to the storyteller itself. It is helpful to understand the nature of the mind. Its job is to think, just as the heart's job is to beat and the lungs' job is to breathe. Your mind is a thought-generating factory, constantly producing thoughts, memories, images, and plans. This is not a problem. In fact, it is a miracle. The problem is not that the mind thinks. The problem is that we believe every single thought it produces. We identify with them completely. We mistake the constant chatter of the factory for the truth of who we are. Imagine your mind is a movie theater. For most of your life, you have been sitting in the front row, completely captivated by the film on the screen. It is an epic drama, full of suspense, romance, and tragedy, and you are its star. When the hero on the screen is happy, you feel joy. When the hero is threatened, your heart pounds with fear. When the hero is wronged, you burn with righteous anger. You are so absorbed in the film that you have completely forgotten you are sitting in a dark theater. You have forgotten the seat beneath you, the quiet space of the room, the projector humming behind you. You believe, with every fiber of your being, that the movie is your reality. The practice of mindfulness of mind is the moment you lean back. It is the moment you feel the cushion of the theater seat supporting you. It's the moment you become aware of the quiet, empty space of the theater itself. It is the moment you look up at the screen and realize, with a liberating shock, this is just a film. It is not me. You can still watch the drama unfold, but you are no longer lost in it. You are no longer its prisoner. You have found your seat as the calm, spacious audience. There is another, perhaps even more profound, metaphor for this. Imagine that your true nature, your basic awareness, is like a vast, open, and clear blue sky. It is inherently peaceful, boundless, and pure. It has been with you since the moment you were born. Your thoughts, emotions, memories, and moods are like the weather that passes through the sky. Some are light, wispy, beautiful white clouds. These are your pleasant, happy thoughts. Some are dark, heavy, turbulent storm clouds. These are your difficult thoughts, your anger, your grief, your fear. Sometimes, the sky is so filled with these storm clouds that you can no longer see the blue. It feels like the storm is everything. But here is the essential truth. No matter how dark or violent the storm, no matter how thick the clouds, they can never, ever stain or harm the sky itself. The sky remains untouched. The storm is just a temporary event in the sky. It is not the sky. When the weather passes, as it always does, the vast clear blue sky is revealed, as perfect and peaceful as it was before. The practice of mindfulness is learning to identify not with the clouds, but with the sky. It is resting in the vast, open awareness that holds all the changing weather of your life. Let's try this practice. Begin, as always, by finding your seat and connecting with the breath for a few moments, letting it be your anchor. Now, gently shift the field of your attention. Let go of the focus on the breath and simply open your awareness to the space of the mind itself. Become like a curious cat, sitting patiently and silently in front of a mouse hole, simply waiting to see what emerges. You are not trying to create thoughts, nor are you trying to stop them. You are just waiting, watching. Inevitably, a thought will appear. The moment you notice that you are thinking, that is a moment of mindfulness. Your only job is to acknowledge its presence. You do not need to follow the thought, believe it, analyze it, or judge it. Instead, you can try a technique of making a soft, silent mental label. The key here is to label the process of the thought, not its content. For example, if a thought about your to-do list arises, instead of getting lost in the list, you can gently note, planning, or maybe just thinking. If a memory from your childhood surfaces, you can note, remembering. If a thought of self-criticism appears, you can label it, judging. If a surge of worry about the future comes, you can note, worrying. This labeling is done with the lightest possible touch. It is not another thought to get lost in, but a simple signpost that helps you recognize the nature of the cloud passing by. After you have labeled the thought, you simply let it be. You don't push it away. You just relax your attention, and it will drift away on its own. Then you return to that state of quiet, open waiting, or you can rest your attention back on the breath, your home base, until the next thought arises. The goal is not to achieve a blank mind. A blank mind is not a mindful mind. The goal is to change your relationship with your thinking process. It is to go from being a character lost in the movie to being the calm, knowing audience. This practice leads to one of the most liberating realizations on the spiritual path. You are not your thoughts. The very fact that you can observe a thought proves that you are not it. The watcher is never the thing being watched. The sky is not the cloud. This creates a space of profound freedom. The negative and self-critical thoughts that have tormented you for years begin to lose their power. When the familiar thought arises that says, "I'm not good enough," or "I always mess things up," a new possibility opens up. Instead of automatically believing it and falling into despair, you can now see it with perspective. Ah, there is the not good enough thought again. I see you. You can even greet it with a sense of friendly curiosity. It's just a dark cloud passing through the vast sky of your awareness. It is not the truth of who you are. By unvelcroing yourself from your thoughts, you free yourself from the tyranny of your own mind. We have now journeyed through the core practices of mindfulness. We have learned to anchor ourselves with the breath, to listen to the wisdom of the body, to observe the rising and falling of our feelings, and to watch the ceaseless movie of our minds from a place of spacious freedom. We have gathered the essential tools for our journey. With these tools in hand, we are no longer helpless victims of life's inevitable pains and sorrows. We are now equipped to meet them with a growing sense of wisdom, balance, and compassion. To see how these tools can be applied in the face of one of life's greatest challenges, we will now turn to one of the most powerful and poignant stories from the Buddhist tradition, the story of a grieving mother named Kisa Gotami, and the profound lesson the Buddha taught her about the nature of suffering, loss, and the path to peace. We have now spent time gathering our tools. With the breath as our anchor, we have learned to steady the boat. With the body scan, we have learned to listen to the wisdom of the vessel itself. With mindfulness of feelings, we have learned to watch the weather patterns of pleasure and pain without being capsized. And with mindfulness of the mind, we have learned to see the stories we tell ourselves for what they are, just stories, not the ultimate truth. These are not merely exercises for a quiet cushion. They are the essential provisions for a journey into the very heart of life. And life, as we know, is not always calm. It brings with it storms of immense force, first arrows of such piercing pain that they threaten to shatter our entire world. There is perhaps no greater storm than the loss of someone we deeply love. It is in the face of such profound grief that our practice is truly tested. To understand how these tools can be applied not just to survive such a storm, but to find a transformative wisdom within it, we turn now to one of the most beloved and poignant teaching stories in the Buddhist tradition. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. Kisa Gotami's life was one of fragility and hope. She had known hardship, but all of her joy, all of her meaning, was wrapped up in her only child, her beloved son. He was the sun in her sky, the anchor of her world. And then one day, suddenly and without warning, the child fell ill and died. In that moment, Kisa Gotami's world ended. Her mind, unable to accept the unbearable reality of this loss, simply broke. She was consumed by a grief so total, so absolute, that it tipped into madness. She picked up the small, cold, lifeless body of her son and began to wander through her village, moving from house to house, from person to person, clutching the child to her chest. Please, she would beg everyone she met, her eyes wild with a sorrow that was too large for her body to contain. Give me medicine for my son. He is sick. Can you not see? I need the medicine that will make him well. The villagers, of course, saw the truth. They saw a grieving mother who had lost her mind. Some looked upon her with pity, shaking their heads in sadness. Others were frightened by her madness and quickly shut their doors. Some, crueler, even mocked her. With each rejection, with each door closed in her face, the walls of her private hell grew thicker. She was utterly and completely alone, isolated in a singular suffering that no one else could possibly understand. This is the nature of overwhelming grief. It convinces us of our own terrible uniqueness. It is the ultimate second arrow, the story that screams, "This is happening only to me. My pain is the greatest pain. I am alone." I dang. Finally, a wise old man, seeing her torment and feeling a deep pity for her, approached her gently. I do not have the medicine you seek, he said, but I know of a man who does. He is the greatest physician of all. Go to the enlightened one, the Buddha. He will have the cure you need. A frantic glimmer of hope ignited in Kisa Gotami's heart. She immediately set off to find the Buddha, and when she saw him, she ran, fell at his feet, laid the body of her son before him, and wailed her story. They say you are the great physician, she cried. Give me the medicine. Cure my son. Here we witness the immense skill and compassion of a fully awakened being. The Buddha looked at her, not with pity, but with a deep, unwavering empathy. He saw her pain, and he knew that any intellectual teaching, any lecture on the nature of impermanence, would be meaningless to her. Her heart was closed, sealed tight by grief. To tell her everything dies would be a cruelty. She needed to discover this truth for herself. So, he met her exactly where she was. He said to her, "You have done well to come to me. There is indeed a cure. But to make it, I require a special ingredient. I need you to go back into the village and bring me a single small mustard seed." Kisa Gotami's eyes lit up. A mustard seed. It was such a simple thing. Every house in the village would have one. Hope surged through her. But then, the Buddha added one condition. The mustard seed, he said calmly, must come from a house where no one a child, no husband, no wife, no parent, no friend, no servanthas ever died. Kisa Gotami nodded eagerly, not fully grasping the weight of his words. She thanked him profusely, picked up her son, and rushed back to the village, her heart now filled with a desperate mission. She knocked on the door of the first house. "The Buddha has sent me," she explained. "He needs a mustard seed to make a medicine for my son." The family, happy to help, immediately went to fetch one. "Wait," Kisa Gotami said, remembering the condition. "Before you give it to me, I must ask, has anyone in this house ever known death?" The woman of the house looked at her with sad eyes. "Oh dear woman," she said softly, "you touch upon our deepest sorrow. We lost our beloved eldest son just last year." Kisa Gotami's heart sank, but she moved on. She went to the next house, a wealthy mansion. Surely, they would have the seed. "Of course," the owner said, "we have jars of them." "But has death ever visited this house?" she asked. The man's face fell. "Our family has lived here for generations," he said. "The living who reside here are few, but the dead are many." She went on, from house to house, from hut to hut, all through the village. And everywhere, the story was the same. The answer was always a kind offering of the seed, followed by a story of loss. "I can give you a mustard seed, but my husband died while working in the fields." "Take all the mustard seed you want, but my wife died in childbirth just a few months ago." "Here is the seed, but we just buried my aged mother." With each door she knocked on, with each story she heard, something inside Kisa Gotami began to shift. Her frantic, desperate, self-absorbed energy began to soften. She was no longer just a beggar on a desperate quest. She had become a listener. She had become a witness to the sorrows of others. The focus on her own unique, unbearable pain began to broaden, to encompass the quiet, aching grief she saw in the eyes of everyone she met. The walls of her isolation, built from the bricks of "why me," began to crumble, replaced by the dawning, heartbreaking realization of "just like me." As dusk fell, she found herself sitting on the outskirts of the village, exhausted. She had not found the mustard seed. She gently laid her son's body down, finally accepting that he was gone. She looked out over the village and saw the lamps being lit in the houses, flickering on, one by one, only to be extinguished later in the night. And in that moment, she understood. She saw the lives of all beings, flickering into existence, shining for a time, and then being extinguished. Her own personal grief had dissolved into a vast, oceanic understanding of the universal nature of sorrow and impermanence. She had not found the medicine for her son, but she had found the medicine for herself. She returned to the Buddha, no longer a mad woman, but a woman sobered and transformed by a profound truth. "I could not find the house," she told him simply. "The dead are more numerous than the living." And the Buddha knew her heart was now open. It was only then that he taught her the Dharma, the truth of suffering and the path to its end. The Buddha's genius was that he did not try to remove her pain. He gave her a task that transformed her pain into empathy. He guided her out of the claustrophobic prison of her own sorrow and into the vast shared landscape of human suffering. In seeing that her grief was not unique, she found a connection to all of humanity. And this connection, this realization that you are not alone in your pain, is the very seed from which true compassion, or karuna, is born. To see our own suffering reflected in the hearts of all beings is the beginning of the end of that suffering. But how do we actively cultivate this quality in our own hearts? How do we consciously practice this alchemy of turning pain into compassion? That is our next step on this journey. The story of Kisa Gotami is a story of transformation. It did not end her pain. The first arrow of her loss was real and irreversible. But it did something miraculous. It took the isolating, maddening poison of her private grief and, through the alchemy of shared experience, transformed it into a connective, healing medicine. This transformation is the secret art of the spiritual path. It is the process of taking the lead of our suffering and turning it into the gold of wisdom. And the primary chemical agent in this profound alchemy, the catalyst that makes this transformation possible, is known as karuna. Karuna is the Pali word for compassion. Now, compassion is a word we use often, but its true meaning is deep and specific. Karuna is not pity. Pity looks down from a position of superiority, saying, "Oh, you poor thing." It creates distance. Karuna is not even empathy, at least not in the sense of simply absorbing another's pain. Empathy can be overwhelming. It can lead to burnout, a feeling of drowning in the sorrows of the world. Karuna is more active, more resilient. It is the trembling of the heart in the presence of suffering. It is the deep, resonant understanding of another's pain, combined with the sincere and powerful aspiration to see that suffering be relieved. It is what happens when our heart breaks, not apart into a million useless pieces, but breaks open into a vast space that has room for the pain of both ourselves and others. In Mahayana Buddhism, this boundless compassion is embodied in the archetypal figure of Avalokiteshvara, the one who hears the cries of the world. The myth tells us that Avalokiteshvara made a vow to listen to the suffering of every single being, and not to rest until all of them were free. As he listened, as he opened himself to the sheer, crushing weight of the world's pain, the task seemed so impossible and the sorrow so immense that his head shattered into 1,000 pieces. He despaired. But the Buddhas, in their wisdom, reassembled him, giving him 1,000 heads so that he could better hear all the cries, and 1,000 arms so that he could better reach out to help. This story is a profound metaphor. It tells us that a true opening to compassion can feel shattering. The initial contact with the world's suffering, our own and others, can feel like it is breaking us. But this breaking is not an end. It is an expansion. It is a transformation from a limited, fragile self into a vast, resilient capacity to hold pain and respond with wisdom and love. True compassion does not diminish us, it makes us boundless. Where do we begin to cultivate such a limitless quality? We do not start by trying to save the world. We start in the only place we can, with ourselves. The first and most crucial step in developing compassion for others is developing compassion for yourself. We cannot pour from an empty cup. If our inner dialogue is one of harsh judgment, relentless criticism, and unforgiving standards, any compassion we try to show others will be thin, brittle, and unsustainable. It is an act of deep integrity to first offer to ourselves the kindness we hope to offer the world. This is not self-pity or selfish indulgence. Self-compassion is the courageous act of turning towards our own suffering with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend. It is looking at our own clinging, our own aversion, our own second arrows, not with condemnation, but with a gentle understanding. It is acknowledging the pain of our own human imperfection. You can practice this right now. You might place a hand gently over your own heart, a gesture of warmth and friendship, and you can bring to mind a difficulty you are currently facing. Feel the discomfort of it in your body. And instead of the usual story of blame or resistance, you can silently offer yourself these phrases. May I be free from this suffering. May I hold my own pain with tenderness. may I be kind to myself in this moment. This is the starting point. It is refilling our own well so that its waters can flow outward. From this ground of self-compassion, we can begin to expand the circle. The traditional practice for cultivating karuna is like this, a meditation that radiates outward in stages. The image to hold is that of a beautiful lotus flower. The lotus is a universal symbol of purity, beauty, and awakening. But where does the lotus grow? It grows out of the dark, thick, smelly mud at the bottom of the pond. The mud is our pain, our grief, our confusion, our despair. The beautiful lotus of compassion can only grow from the rich, fertile ground of our own acknowledged suffering. Pain is not the obstacle to compassion. It is its necessary ingredient. So, you begin with yourself, in the mud of your own difficulties, offering the wish, "May I be free from suffering and its causes." Then, you bring to mind a person you love dearly, a friend or a family member. Picture them in your mind's eye. You know that they too have their own struggles, their own fears, their own secret sorrows, known and unknown to you. You hold them in your heart, and you extend the sincere wish, "May you be free from your suffering. May you find peace and healing." Feel this wish radiating from your heart to theirs. Next, you bring to mind a neutral person. Someone you see often but have no strong feelings about, the clerk at the grocery store. A person you pass on your commute. A neighbor down the street. You realize that this person, who is just a background figure in your life's movie, is the star of their own. They have a whole life filled with hopes, fears, and struggles, just like you. And you extend the wish to them, "May you too be free from your suffering and its causes." In this step, you are stretching the muscle of your heart, moving beyond your usual circle of concern. Now comes the most challenging and transformative step. You bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you. The habitual reaction is to feel anger, resentment, and aversion. But here, the practice of karuna invites a radical shift. Instead of focusing on what they did, you try, with wisdom, to see their suffering. You recognize that their harmful actions are almost certainly driven by their own inner pain, their own blindness, their own craving and aversion. From this wiser, more spacious perspective, you extend the wish. "Just as I wish to be free from suffering, may you be free from the suffering that causes you to act in this way." This is not about condoning their actions or becoming a doormat. It is a profound act of liberation for yourself. It is you choosing to release the hot coal of hatred, not for their sake, but for yours. Finally, you let the circle expand to its ultimate boundary, which is no boundary at all. You extend your compassionate wish to all living beings everywhere, to people in your city, in your country, and in all countries across the world, to the animals, to the creatures in the sea and in the sky, to all beings, seen and unseen, near and far, friendly, neutral, and difficult. And you hold them all in your heart with the single powerful aspiration: "May all beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering." This practice is the direct antidote to dvesha, to aversion. You cannot simultaneously hold a genuine wish for another's well-being and a feeling of hatred toward them. One will always displace the other. Compassion is not a weakness. It is the source of an unshakable, resilient strength. It dissolves the illusion of our separation and connects us to the heart of all life. And this profound feeling of connection, this dissolving of the hard boundaries between self and other that compassion fosters, is a direct doorway to an even deeper wisdom. When we truly feel that another's suffering is, in a way, our own, we are beginning to experience the truth of our radical interconnectedness. This insight is the gateway to one of the most profound teachings of the Buddha, the wisdom of emptiness, or sunyata. The practice of karuna, of deep compassion, does something extraordinary to the heart. As we extend genuine goodwill to ourselves, to our loved ones, and even to those who have caused us pain, we begin to feel the hard, sharp edges of our own self begin to soften and dissolve. The rigid distinction between my suffering and your suffering starts to become porous and translucent. In moments of true compassion, we feel a profound connection, a sense of shared being that transcends our skin. This feeling of connection is not just a pleasant emotion. It is a glimpse into a truth about the nature of reality itself, a truth that sits at the very heart of the Buddha's wisdom. This is the wisdom of sunyata, often translated as emptiness. Now, the word emptiness can sound frightening. It can conjure images of a cold, nihilistic void, a bleak nothingness. But this is a fundamental misunderstanding. In the Buddhist context, emptiness does not mean non-existence. It means empty of a separate, independent, standalone self. It is a teaching not of absence, but of radical, profound interconnectedness. It is the wisdom that reveals the illusion of our separation. To grasp this, let us not start with complex philosophy, but with something simple and beautiful. A flower. Let us hold a flower in our mind's eye. We look at it and we see its color, its petals, its stem. We give it the label flower. It seems to be a single distinct thing. But if we look with the eyes of sunyata, we begin to see it differently. We ask the question, can this flower exist all by itself? Let's investigate. If we take away the sunlight, the flower cannot photosynthesize, and it will die. So, the sunlight is a vital part of the flower. If we take away the rain, its petals will wilt and it will turn to dust. So, the water is in the flower. If we take away the soil, the minerals, and the earth that nourished its roots, it could never have grown. So, the earth is in the flower. If we look even closer, we see the cloud that brought the rain is also in the flower. The bee that may have pollinated its parent plant is in the flower. The generations of gardeners who cultivated the seeds are in the flower. When we truly look, we see that the flower is entirely made up of non-flower elements. It has no separate, intrinsic self. It is a temporary, beautiful gathering of the entire universe. Its being is a manifestation of the sun, the sky, the earth, and the rain. This is the meaning of emptiness. The flower is empty of a separate self. And the corollary to this is that because it is empty, it is full of everything. This insight is often expressed in the phrase, to be is to inter-be. Nothing in the cosmos can exist by itself. A teacher cannot exist without students. A doctor cannot exist without patients. A cloud cannot exist without the sea. We think of ourselves as a distinct, separate being. But like the flower, we are a temporary gathering of countless conditions. We are made of the food our parents ate, the language they spoke, the ideas of our culture, the air we breathe, the sunlight we absorb. Every person we have ever met, every book we have ever read, every joy and every sorrow has become a part of the process that we call me. There is no hard, fixed border between ourselves and the universe. We inter-are with all that is. There is a majestic metaphor from the Mahayana tradition that illustrates this truth. The celestial net of the god Indra. Imagine a vast net that stretches out infinitely in all directions. At every single node where the threads of the net cross, there is a perfectly clear, multifaceted jewel. The net is structured in such a way that if you look closely at the polished surface of any one jewel, you will see reflected in it every other jewel in the entire infinite net. Not only that, but each reflection in that single jewel also contains all the other reflections, and so on, ad infinitum. What this image so beautifully conveys is that the individual and the cosmos are not separate. Each part of the universe contains the whole. An event that touches one jewel sends shimmering reverberations throughout the entire web of existence. Your joy is reflected in me. My sorrow is reflected in you. Our lives are deeply, inextricably interwoven. This is not just lofty poetry. It has a profoundly practical application that can transform our daily lives, especially our relationships. Let us return to the difficult person we worked with in the compassion practice. Our ordinary view, the view of a separate self, sees this person as a solid, independent entity, an enemy who has intentionally hurt me, another solid, independent entity. This view inevitably leads to blame, resentment, and the endless, painful story of me versus you. Now, let us look at this person with the wisdom of sunyata. We see that they, like the flower, are empty of a solid, independent self. They're a product of countless causes and conditions that we may never fully know. Their hurtful words or actions are not the expression of some evil, unchanging core. They are the result of their own pain, their own ignorance, their own conditioning. their own second arrows. They are the result of their family history, their cultural environment, their own unhealed wounds. To see this is not to excuse their harmful behavior. We still set firm boundaries. We still protect ourselves from harm. But the inner poison of blame and hatred begins to cool. We are no longer reacting to a solid perpetrator, but responding with wisdom to a complex suffering process. The story shifts from me against you to an understanding that we are two interconnected parts of the same web, both caught in our own patterns of suffering. This insight makes true forgiveness possible and frees us from the burden of our own resentment. So, you see, emptiness is not a void, it is a radical fullness. It is the realization that nothing is isolated, that everything contains everything else. When you look at your hand, you can see the sun, the clouds, and your ancestors. When you look at a piece of bread, you can see the wheat field, the farmer, the baker, and the whole chain of life that brought it to your table. This perspective fosters a sense of profound reverence and wonder. It dissolves the painful illusion of our isolation and replaces it with a deep sense of belonging to the magnificent, interconnected dance of life. This wisdom is the peak of the mountain. It is the ultimate view that liberates the heart. But even the most profound teaching, even the most sublime view, can become a trap if we cling to it. It can become another possession for the ego, another badge of spiritual accomplishment. The final stage of wisdom is knowing that every teaching is a tool, a finger pointing to the moon, but not the moon itself. To truly arrive at the other shore of liberation, we must eventually be willing to let go of the very raft that carried us across the river. We have journeyed to the highest peaks of wisdom, exploring the interconnected nature of reality through the lens of compassion and the profound truth of emptiness, sunyata. We have seen that the separate self we cling to is an illusion, and that our true nature is as vast and interconnected as Indra's magnificent net. To understand these teachings is to hold a key that can unlock any prison the mind might create. And yet, here lies one of the most subtle and final traps on the spiritual path. The human mind, in its infinite craftiness, can take the very keys to its liberation and turn them into a new, more refined and more beautiful cage. The ego, seeing that its old attachments to wealth, status, and pleasure are a source of suffering, can cleverly abandon them only to take up new attachments. An attachment to being spiritual, an attachment to knowledge, an attachment to a particular practice, or even an attachment to the idea of enlightenment itself. This is the danger of what is sometimes called spiritual materialism. It is the act of collecting spiritual ideas and experiences as if they were precious gems, using them to build a new and improved ego. To guard against this final subtle trap, the Buddha offered one of his most important and enduring parables. It is a story that teaches us about the proper use of spiritual teachings and the ultimate necessity of letting everything go. It is the parable of the raft. Imagine, the Buddha said, a person on a long journey. They come to the edge of a great expanse of water. It is a vast turbulent river, and the shore on which they stand is filled with danger, fear, and uncertainty. This shore represents samsara, the endless cycle of suffering, of birth and death, of craving and aversion in which we live. But across the river, the other shore is visible. It is a place of safety, peace, and ultimate security. This other shore is nirvana, liberation. There is no bridge to cross this great water, and there is no ferryman to take you. The traveler must rely on their own resources. So, being resourceful, the person gathers materials they find on the bank reeds, branches, vines, and logs. They work diligently, with focus and effort, and they bind these materials together to construct a simple raft. Then, relying on the raft they have built, they paddle with all their strength, navigating the dangerous currents, and finally, after great effort, arrive safely on the other shore. They stand on the firm ground of liberation, profoundly grateful for the raft that has saved them from the perilous waters. Now, the Buddha posed the critical question to his monks. What do you think should this person do with the raft? Should they say to themselves, "This raft has been so very helpful to me. It carried me to safety. I cannot possibly abandon it now." And so, out of a sense of gratitude and attachment, Should they hoist the raft up onto their head and carry it with them as they continue their journey on dry land? The answer, of course, is obvious. That would be a foolish thing to do. The wise person, the Buddha explained, would think, "This raft served its purpose beautifully. I am deeply grateful for it." And then they would leave the raft at the water's edge and continue their journey onward, unburdened. So it is, the Buddha concluded, with my teachings. I have taught the Dharma as being like a raft, for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping and holding on. This simple story is a profound lesson for anyone on a spiritual path. What then is the raft? The raft is everything we use to cross the river of suffering. The raft is the very teachings we have been exploring. The concepts of dukkha, anicca, and anatta are parts of the raft. They are brilliant analytical tools for deconstructing our suffering. But if we become attached to them, endlessly debating their philosophical nuances without applying them in our hearts, we are just polishing the raft on the dangerous shore. We become scholars of the menu instead of tasting the food. The raft is also our spiritual practices. Mindfulness of the breath, the body scan, compassion meditation, these are essential techniques for paddling across the river. But if we become rigid and dogmatic about them, believing our method is the only correct one, we are clinging to the raft. If we use our practice to build a new identity, I am a meditator, I am more mindful than others, we are decorating the raft instead of using it. The practice itself can become a subtle form of ego, a way to feel special, which is the very opposite of its purpose. The goal is not to be a perfect meditator, the goal is to become free. The raft can also be the rituals, the rules, and the traditions we follow. Chanting, bowing, wearing certain clothes, following specific precepts, these can be beautiful and powerful containers that support our journey. They can provide structure and community. But if we cling to the outer form without understanding the inner spirit, if we believe the ritual itself holds some magical power separate from the intention we bring to it, we are again mistaking the raft for the destination. The true purpose of any ethical rule is not to be a restriction, but to be a guideline that helps us navigate the currents of greed, hatred, and delusion more skillfully. The ultimate teaching of this parable is that even the most sublime concepts must eventually be released. Even the idea of emptiness, if it becomes a new belief system we cling to, is still part of the raft. Even the desire for enlightenment itself, if it is filled with striving, anxiety, and a sense of a me who is going to get it, can become the final obstacle. True liberation happens in a state of complete letting go. It is an arrival that occurs not through more grasping, but through a final, profound release. This is a call for wisdom and flexibility. It is about understanding the spirit of the teachings, not just the letter. A good doctor does not give every patient the same medicine. They diagnose the specific illness and prescribe the appropriate cure. In the same way, a wise spiritual practitioner learns to apply the right teaching at the right time. There are times on the journey when we need fierce effort and determination, when we must paddle with all our might. And there are other times when what is needed is complete surrender, the wisdom to stop paddling and let the current of grace carry us. The goal is simply to get to the other shore. The person who has truly crossed the river and left the raft behind does not walk around thinking about the principles of raft building. They do not carry a manual on navigation. They simply walk freely on the new shore. Their peace, their wisdom, their compassion is no longer a self-conscious technique they are applying. It has become the natural, spontaneous expression of their being. They are no longer defined by the journey or by the vehicle that carried them. They are simply and authentically free. This parable is a beautiful and vital caution against the subtle pride that can arise from spiritual practice. It reminds us that every teaching, every concept, every practice is a finger pointing to the moon. We must use the finger to find the moon, but we must never mistake the finger for the moon itself. The ultimate goal is not to possess the most beautiful, most well-constructed raft, but to arrive on the other shore and walk away unburdened. This ultimate act of letting go, of releasing one's entire past identity, opens the door to the most radical forms of human transformation. But what about a person whose past is not just filled with ordinary mistakes, but with truly horrific actions? Is it possible for even such a person to let go of their raft, the raft of their own terrible history, and find freedom? The astonishing and true story of a mass murderer named Angulimala provides the definitive answer. The parable of the raft teaches us the wisdom of letting go of our tools, our concepts, and even our spiritual identities when they have served their purpose. It is a profound lesson in non-clinging. This implies the necessity of letting go of our past, of the person we once were, in order to be free in the present. But this raises a challenging question. Are there limits to this freedom? Are some pasts too dark? Some actions too unforgivable? Some identities so monstrous that they can never be let go of? Is redemption truly possible for everyone, or only for those whose mistakes fall within a certain acceptable range? The life of the Buddha provides the most dramatic, uncompromising, and astonishing answer to this question in the story of a man named Angulimala. This is not a gentle parable. It is the true account of an encounter between a mass murderer and an awakened mind. And it reveals the boundless, radical potential for transformation that exists within every human heart. In the time of the Buddha, the kingdom of Kosala was gripped by a reign of terror. A ruthless killer haunted the Jalini forest, a predator so fearsome that he had brought society to a standstill. Villages were abandoned, roads were deserted. Travelers would take long, arduous detours to avoid the forest, and even large armed groups of men were no match for him. He was known as Angulimala, which means garland of fingers, because his gruesome signature was to cut a finger from each of his victims and wear them as a necklace, adding to his collection as he went. He was seen not merely as a criminal, but as a demon, a force of pure, inhuman evil. But Angulimala was not born a demon. He was born with the name Ahimsaka, which ironically means the harmless one. He was the son of a high-caste Brahmin and was sent to study with a renowned teacher. He was a brilliant and dedicated student, excelling in all his studies and earning the respect of his peers. This, however, ignited a burning jealousy in some of the other students, who conspired against him. They went to the teacher and falsely accused Ahimsaka of seducing the teacher's wife and plotting against him. The teacher, enraged, devised a terrible and cruel revenge. He told Ahimsaka that his training was almost complete, but to graduate, he had to perform one final act of Guru Dakshina, a traditional offering of gratitude to one's teacher. The offering he demanded was a garland made of 1,000 human fingers from 1,000 different people. Ahimsaka, trapped by a twisted sense of duty and a deluded devotion to his guru, was horrified but felt he had no choice. He entered the forest, committed his first murder, and began his dark and terrible task. This is crucial to understand. Angulimala's evil was not innate. It was born from delusion, from ignorance, and from a corrupted sense of purpose. He was a man trapped in a horrific nightmare of his own making. The news of this terror reached the Buddha. His response was simple and direct. He began to walk towards the Jalini forest. The local townspeople, cowherds, and farmers saw him and begged him not to go. "Do not go, venerable monk," they cried. "That forest is the home of Angulimala. He has killed groups of 10, 20, even 40 men. You are alone. He will surely kill you." The Buddha listened to their pleas but continued on his way, silent, serene, and utterly fearless. Deep in the forest, Angulimala, who had by now collected 999 fingers, saw the Buddha approaching. He was amazed and delighted. "Truly wonderful," he thought. "Here I have been struggling to find my last victim, and this lone monk wanders right into my path. Today, my collection will be complete." He grabbed his sword and his shield and began to run after the Buddha. But then, a strange thing happened. Though Angulimala was a strong and swift warrior, running with all his might, he could not catch up to the Buddha, who was only walking at a calm, normal pace. He ran faster and faster, but the distance remained the same. It was as if the world itself was bending to the will of the Buddha's serene presence. Exhausted, bewildered, and frustrated, Angulimala finally stopped and shouted across the distance, "Stop, monk, stop!" The Buddha, without breaking his stride, replied in a calm, clear voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not." This response confused Angulimala completely. "What can you possibly mean, monk?" he yelled back. "You are still walking, while I am the one who is standing still. How can you say that you have stopped and I have not?" The Buddha then turned to him and said, "I have stopped, Angulimala, because I have laid down the rod and the sword. I have stopped forever from doing harm to any living being. But you are still running, still killing, still caught in the endless cycle of violence. That is why I have stopped and you have not." In that moment, something broke inside Angulimala. For years, the only response he had known from other human beings was terror. They either fled from him or fought him. No one had ever spoken to him with such fearless calm. No one had ever shown him compassion. The Buddha's words, combined with his radiant and unshakable peace, acted like a perfect mirror. In that mirror, Angulimala saw himself for the first time not as a fearsome demon, but as a pathetic, miserable being, running frantically in a circle of his own suffering, covered in the blood of his own delusion. The sheer futility and horror of his life became completely clear. The spell was broken. He threw his sword and shield to the ground, ran to the Buddha, and fell at his feet, weeping. He begged to be freed from his nightmare, to be accepted as a follower. The Buddha, seeing the genuine transformation in his heart, accepted him into the monastic order. In that moment, the killer Angulimala died, and the monk Ahimsaka was reborn. But the story does not end there. Angulimala's transformation was real, but karma, the law of cause and effect, is also real. After becoming a monk, Angulimala was diligent in his practice. Yet, when he would go into the nearby town for his daily alms round, people would recognize him. They would scream and run in terror. Others, whose family members he had killed, would throw stones, sticks, and garbage at him. He would often return to the monastery with his bowl empty, his head cut and bleeding, and his robes torn. One day, he went to the Buddha, in pain, and complained about his reception. The Buddha's response was profound. He said, "Bear it, my friend. Bear it with patience. What you are experiencing now is the immediate result of the actions for which you might have otherwise suffered in hell for many thousands of years. Your spiritual attainment has not erased your past actions, but it has allowed you to experience their consequences here and now, with a heart of equanimity, and in a way that can be exhausted." Angulimala understood. He accepted this as part of his path. He never retaliated, never grew angry. He met the hatred of the world with the peace he had found within. And through this patient endurance, he purified the last of his negative karma and eventually became a fully enlightened arhat, a being completely free from suffering. The story of Angulimala is the Buddha's most powerful statement on the human condition. It teaches us that no one is inherently evil. Harmful actions are born from suffering and ignorance. It shows the incredible, world-changing power of meeting hatred not with fear, but with unwavering compassion. The Buddha did not defeat Angulimala with a greater force. He transformed him with a greater peace. And it teaches us that no matter how dark our past, no matter how heavy the raft of our history, the possibility of letting it go and stepping onto the shore of awakening is always present. Angulimala's transformation was total, affecting his entire being. For most of us, our own transformation unfolds in smaller steps in our daily lives. Having witnessed this profound inner change, the question for us becomes, how do we begin to manifest this wisdom in our own world? The most common and immediate way we interact with others is through the power of our words. And so, our journey now turns to the practical art of right speech. The astonishing transformation of Angulimala from a feared murderer into an enlightened saint shows us that the human heart has a limitless capacity for change. This was a profound, seismic shift that occurred in the deepest recesses of his being. For us, walking a more ordinary path, this inner transformation must find its expression in the world. Our inner peace and wisdom must be translated into our outer life. But how do we build that bridge? How do we ensure that the clarity we cultivate on the meditation cushion is not lost the moment we open our mouths to speak? The Buddha provided a supremely practical roadmap for this, known as the Noble Eightfold Path. The path begins with our view and intention, and then it moves directly into the arena of our daily conduct. The first and most frequent way we express our inner state is through our speech. Our words are the vehicles that carry our thoughts and intentions out into the world. They can be messengers of peace, connection, and healing, or they can be weapons that inflict deep and lasting wounds. The practice of learning to use this power with wisdom and compassion is called samavaka, or right speech. Right speech is not about a rigid set of rules or a polite censorship of our expression. It is a profound mindfulness practice, a way of bringing awareness and kindness to the very act of communication. The classic teachings frame this practice around 4 key principles, which can be thought of as 4 gates that our words should pass through before we release them into the world. The first gate is it true? This is the commitment to abstain from false speech. At its most basic level, this means not telling deliberate lies, but it goes much deeper. It means letting go of the subtle deceptions we engage in to manage our image, the exaggerations we use to make a story more exciting, the white lies we tell to avoid minor discomforts. It's about cultivating a deep respect for reality as it is. It invites us to check our intention. Are we speaking to clarify, to connect, and to express what is real? Or are we speaking to manipulate, to conceal, or to protect our fragile ego? This commitment to truth is the foundation of all clear communication. However, truth spoken without kindness can be a weapon in itself. And so, our words must pass through the second gate. The second gate is it kind? This is the practice of abstaining from harsh or abusive speech. This obviously includes refraining from overt verbal aggression like yelling, insulting, or belittling others. This kind of speech is the hot coal of aversion, weaponized and thrown at another person. But this gate also guards against the more subtle forms of verbal harm. The sharp edge of sarcasm, the backhanded compliment, the condescending tone that implies superiority. Right speech invites us to notice the intention to hurt, to diminish, or to assert dominance, and to pause before speaking from that poisoned place. It is the practice of speaking to people, not at them, with a voice that seeks to soothe rather than to wound. Having passed through the gates of truth and kindness, our words arrive at the third gate. Is it helpful and uniting? This is the practice of abstaining from divisive speech. This is the commitment not to use our words to set one person against another. It means letting go of slander, of speaking ill of others behind their backs. It particularly targets the seductive and toxic habit of gossip. Gossip can feel powerful. It can create a false sense of intimacy with the person we are gossiping with, a feeling of being on the inside. But it is a connection built on the foundation of negativity and separation. It poisons relationships and creates an atmosphere of distrust. This gate asks us to consider, will my words build bridges or walls? Will they lead to harmony or to discord? It encourages us to use our speech to foster understanding, to heal rifts, and to remind people of their shared humanity. Finally, our words arrive at the fourth and final gate. Is it necessary and timely? This is the practice of abstaining from idle chatter. Our communicative energy is precious, and this principle asks us to use it with intention. It is a caution against the habit of filling every available silence with noise, with mindless complaining, pointless speculation, or conversation that serves no purpose other than to hear our own voice. This doesn't mean we cannot be lighthearted or humorous. Joyful and connecting conversation is deeply skillful. It means bringing mindfulness to our speech, rather than speaking on autopilot. A vital part of this fourth gate is the recognition of the power of noble silence. In a world that is saturated with noise, silence can be one of the greatest gifts we offer to ourselves and others. This is not an awkward, empty silence, but a rich, restful, and aware silence. It is the space in which we can truly listen. It is the space where wisdom can arise before it is cluttered with unnecessary words. Sometimes, the most intelligent, compassionate, and healing thing one can possibly say is nothing at all. There is a story of a Zen master who was repeatedly provoked and insulted by a visitor. The master simply sat, smiling gently, in complete silence. The visitor eventually grew exhausted and left. A student asked the master why he did not respond. The master said, His words were his, my silence is mine. I chose not to accept his gift of anger. This silence was not passive. It was a powerful, unshakable expression of peace. These four gates teach us what to refrain from, but right speech is also an active practice. It is not just about what we don't say, but about what we do. And the most active and compassionate form of right speech is the practice of deep listening. To listen to another person with your full, undivided, non-judgmental attention is one of the greatest gifts you can give them. It means listening not just to their words, but to the feelings beneath the words. It means setting aside your own agenda, your own need to reply, to fix, or to debate, and simply offering the spaciousness of your presence. This kind of listening, in itself, is profoundly healing. And what about when we must speak a difficult truth? Right speech provides a framework for offering feedback in a way that is skillful and compassionate. First, we check our own intention. Is our goal to genuinely help, or is it to criticize and prove ourselves right? Second, we find the right time and place, a setting that is private and calm. Third, we speak from our own experience, using I statements rather than accusatory you statements. Instead of saying, "You are always so inconsiderate," we might say, "When this happens, I feel hurt." We focus on the specific behavior, not on the person's character. This transforms a potential confrontation into a compassionate and honest offering. Ultimately, every conversation we have is an opportunity for mindfulness practice. It is a form of meditation in motion. Before we speak, we can learn to insert a tiny pause, a sacred space where we can check our intention and consider the four gates. After we have spoken, we can reflect without judgment. Were those words helpful? What was their effect? This is how we learn, how we refine our communication, how we slowly transform our speech from a source of automatic, reactive suffering into an expression of conscious, healing wisdom. Our words shape our world. Right speech is the art of shaping that world with beauty, truth, and love. And just as our words are the expression of our thoughts, our physical actions are the expression of our words. A truly integrated practice requires that our entire way of being in the world aligns with this path of peace. This leads us to explore the next steps on the path. Right action and right livelihood. The inner world is where our transformation begins, but it is not where it ends. A tree is judged not by the complexity of its root system, but by the quality of the fruit it bears. In the same way, the value of our spiritual practice is measured by how it manifests in our lives, in our interactions, in our very way of being in the world. Having explored the practice of right speech, learning to align our words with our deepest intentions for peace, we now turn to the way we embody those intentions through our physical presence. This is the domain of right action and right livelihood. These are not merely ethical rules to follow out of obligation, but joyful expressions of a heart that is becoming more clear, more kind, and more free. They are the natural extension of our mindfulness practice into the vibrant, dynamic, and often challenging arena of our daily life. Right action, or sammakamanta, is the practice of aligning our physical actions with the core principle of non-harming. The classic formulation of this teaching is based on abstaining from three main actions: abstaining from taking life, abstaining from taking what is not given, and abstaining from sexual misconduct. Let us look at each of these not as a restrictive, "thou shalt not," but as a positive invitation to cultivate a deep and active respect for life. To abstain from taking life is, at its most basic level, a commitment not to kill other human beings. But its spirit extends much further. It is an encouragement to cultivate a genuine reverence for all living things. It invites us to consider our impact on the animals, the insects, and the environment that sustains us. It asks us to walk through the world with a gentle step, to be a protector of life rather than a destroyer of it. In our daily interactions, it means choosing a presence that is calm and reassuring, rather than aggressive or threatening. It is the active practice of causing no harm. To abstain from taking what is not given moves beyond the simple act of theft. It is a deep practice of respecting the boundaries and possessions of others. This includes not just physical objects, but also things like intellectual property, or even another person's time and attention. It is a commitment to honesty and transparency in our dealings. On a deeper level, it is an antidote to the grasping mind of Tana. When we are content with what we have, when we are not constantly feeling a sense of lack, the desire to take what belongs to another simply does not arise. It is a practice of cultivating integrity and inner wealth. To abstain from sexual misconduct is a call to bring mindfulness, respect, and kindness into one of the most powerful and intimate areas of human experience. It means ensuring that our sexual expression does not cause harm to ourselves or to others, emotionally or physically. It is a commitment to honesty, to mutual consent, and to a genuine care for the well-being of our partners, rather than seeing them as objects for our own sensual gratification. It is the practice of transforming a potential source of great clinging and suffering into an expression of conscious, loving connection. Ultimately, right action is the art of moving through the world in a way that creates safety, trust, and well-being, rather than fear, discord, and harm. Every action we take, from how we drive our car to how we interact with a service person, becomes an opportunity to practice. Is this action coming from a place of mindfulness and kindness, or from a place of reactivity and self-interest? This principle of non-harming then extends into the area where we spend the majority of our waking hours. Our work. This is the practice of right livelihood, or sama ajiva. The Buddha recognized that the way we earn our living has a profound impact on our spiritual path. If our work requires us to violate our deepest values every day, it is nearly impossible to cultivate a peaceful and clear mind. Right livelihood, therefore, is the principle that our work should be honorable and should not cause harm to ourselves or to any other living being. The classic texts list 5 types of livelihood to be avoided. Trade in weapons, trade in living beings, including raising animals for slaughter and the slave trade. Trade in meat production, trade in poisons, and trade in intoxicants. The common thread here is clear. These are all businesses based directly on causing harm, delusion, or the destruction of life. In our complex modern world, the application of this principle requires careful, personal reflection. We can ask ourselves, does my work require me to lie or deceive? Does my company exploit its workers or damage the environment? Does my industry profit from fueling addiction, craving, or division? Am I involved in creating products or media that promote violence, hatred, or a sense of inadequacy in people? These are not always easy questions with simple answers. The reality, of course, is that many people do not have the luxury of choosing a perfect, spiritually aligned career. Many people work difficult jobs simply to feed their families. The teaching of right livelihood is not intended as a judgment on these people. For those whose circumstances are constrained, the practice shifts from the what to the how. If you must work in a difficult or unwholesome environment, can you still be an island of integrity within it? Can you be the one person in the office who refuses to participate in harmful gossip? Can you treat your customers with genuine respect and kindness, even if the company culture does not? Can you perform your tasks with a mindful presence rather than with resentment? There is a beautiful image of a traditional potter at their wheel. As they work the clay, their mind is not somewhere else. They are not just rushing to produce a commodity to be sold. Their breath is steady. Their hands are sensitive to the needs of the clay. Their mind is focused, present, and infused with a quiet care. The act of creation becomes a meditation. The finished pot is not just an object. It is an embodiment of that mindful presence. In this way, any work can become a spiritual practice. Whether you are writing code, cleaning a room, preparing a meal, or caring for a child, when you bring your full, undivided, non-judgmental attention to the task, it becomes a form of meditation. It becomes right livelihood in action. The goal is to dissolve the artificial wall we often build between our work life and our real life. Our practice is not something we do for 20 minutes on a cushion in the morning so we can then go out and endure the rest of our day. The path of awakening is about integration. It is about creating a seamless life, where our time on the cushion nourishes our time at our desk, and the challenges at our desk become the very material for our practice of patience, wisdom, and compassion. It is about making our entire life an expression of our deepest purpose. Through right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we learn to walk our talk. We cultivate an ethical and compassionate presence that brings benefit and not harm to the world around us. We have done our best to purify our own conduct, to make our own boat as seaworthy as possible. But what happens when we are sailing peacefully and another boat, driven by a heedless or aggressive pilot, comes hurtling towards us? What do we do when the conflict and carelessness of the world inevitably crash into our own carefully cultivated peace? The ancient Taoist parable of the empty boat offers a profound answer, showing us the art of navigating the collisions of life without being drawn back into the stormy waters of anger and blame. We have now walked the path of transforming our own being from the inside out. Through right speech, we learn to make our words a source of healing. Through right action and right livelihood, we learn to make our physical presence in the world a force for non-harming and well-being. We have, to the best of our ability, learned to sail our own boat with mindfulness, integrity, and care. We have cleaned our own house, but we do not sail on a private lake. We sail on the vast, crowded, and often chaotic ocean of the world. And this ocean is filled with other boats, piloted by people who are not practicing this way. People who are driven by the strong winds of their own unexamined craving and aversion. Inevitably, there will be collisions. Someone will cut you off in traffic. A colleague will make a passive-aggressive comment in a meeting. A loved one, in a moment of their own pain, will say something sharp and hurtful. In these moments, what happens to our carefully cultivated peace? For most of us, it shatters instantly. The first arrow of the event strikes, and the second arrow of our reaction is launched before we even know it. Our heart pounds, our face gets hot, and the story of blame begins. How dare they do that to me? They have no respect. I am the victim of their carelessness, their aggression, their injustice. Our peace is gone, replaced by the bitter, churning waters of anger and resentment. How do we navigate these inevitable collisions without getting thrown overboard into our old reactive patterns? An ancient Taoist story, which fits so perfectly within the Buddhist understanding of the mind, offers us a master key. It is the parable of the empty boat. Imagine you are in a small boat, gently rowing across a misty river at dusk. A sense of peace envelops you. The world is quiet, save for the gentle lapping of the water against your hull. It is a moment of perfect stillness. Suddenly, out of the mist, another boat comes crashing into yours with a loud thud. Your peace is instantly shattered. Your first reaction is a surge of anger. You stand up and shout into the mist. "Hey, what are you doing? Watch where you are going. Are you blind, you careless fool?" You are filled with righteous indignation. Your nervous system is flooded with adrenaline. You are ready for a confrontation. But as the other boat drifts closer, you look and you see that there is no one in it. It is an empty boat. It simply broke loose from its moorings upstream and was carried down by the current until it bumped into you. Now, what happens to your anger? It vanishes. It has nowhere to land. You cannot be angry at an empty boat. The blame evaporates. The story of personal assault dissolves. You might feel a flash of annoyance at the jolt, but the intense, personal anger is gone. You simply push the empty boat away, check to see if there is any damage to your own, and then you continue on your journey, your inner peace largely undisturbed. The event was an inconvenience, not a personal attack. The collision was identical in both scenarios. The only thing that changed was the presence of someone to blame. The core insight of this parable is a radical and liberating proposition. In life, every boat that hits you is empty. Let this sink in. The person who insults you is an empty boat. The driver who cuts you off is an empty boat. The friend who lets you down is an empty boat. This does not mean they are not real people. It means that the force driving their unskillful action is not a solid, malicious self that is deliberately targeting you. The force driving them is the invisible, powerful currents of their own suffering. They are a boat that has broken loose from the moorings of mindfulness, pushed and pulled by the deep currents of their own conditioning, their own fear, their own insecurity, their own unhealed wounds. Their angry words are not really about you. They are a manifestation of the storm raging inside of them. When you can see this, when you can look at the person who is causing you pain and see not a villain, but an empty boat adrift on the currents of its own suffering. The entire dynamic changes. This is the practical application of the wisdom of anatta, or no self. When we truly understand that the other person is not a solid, independent entity, but a complex, ever-changing process of thoughts, feelings, and conditions, the idea of a personal attacker begins to dissolve. We see that the hurtful action arises from a web of causes and conditions, not from a singular, evil source. And in that moment of seeing, the second arrow of our own anger has no target. We have no reason to fire it. The collision is still a first arrow. It may still be painful, but we are no longer compounding that pain with the poison of our own blame and resentment. This is not an invitation to be passive or to become a doormat. It is the source of true strength and skillful action. Of course, you still push the empty boat away. If a boat is repeatedly bumping into you, you move your own boat. If the person in the other boat is a danger to themselves or others, you may need to alert the authorities. You still set clear boundaries. You can still say, with calm clarity, when you speak to me in that tone, it is not acceptable. The crucial difference is the inner state from which you act. You are no longer reacting with the blind rage of a victim. You are responding with the clear-headed wisdom of someone who understands the situation. You are dealing with a drifting boat, not fighting an enemy. This is the reclamation of your own emotional sovereignty. As long as someone else has the power to make you angry, they have control over you. They are the puppet master, and your emotions are the strings. But when you see them as an empty boat, you cut the strings. Their lack of skillfulness no longer has the power to destroy your inner peace. You are free. This can become a powerful mindfulness practice in your daily life. The next time a collision occurs, you feel insulted, ignored, or wronged. This. Before the familiar heat of anger rises, take one conscious breath. In that precious pause, bring this image to mind. Visualize the other person as an empty boat, tossed about by winds and currents you cannot see. Silently say to yourself, the boat is empty. Notice what this does. Notice how it creates space around the event. Notice how the heat of personalization begins to cool. You may still feel the initial sting of the first arrow, but you will find that the urge to fire the second one has greatly diminished. In its place, there may be a sense of spaciousness, of clarity, and maybe, just maybe, a touch of compassion for the other drifting boat. The parable of the empty boat teaches us to stop taking the turmoil of the world so personally. By seeing the conditioning and suffering behind the unskillful actions of others, we liberate ourselves from the prison of anger, blame, and victimhood. We protect our own peace, not by building walls to prevent collisions, but by understanding the nature of the boats that bump into us. This wisdom cultivates a deep and resilient peace, a calm that can withstand the storms of the world. But the spiritual path is not only about finding peace in the face of difficulty. It is also about cultivating an active, selfless, and profound joy. Beyond just navigating suffering, we can learn to celebrate happiness wherever we find it. And this leads us to the beautiful, heart-opening practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Our journey together has largely been one of learning how to skillfully navigate the difficult territories of the heart. We have learned to sit with our suffering dukkha, without being consumed by it. We have learned to meet the pain of others with the trembling, open heart of compassion, karuna. We have learned, through the parable of the empty boat, how to maintain our inner peace even when faced with the unskillfulness and conflict of the world. These are all profound and essential practices. But is this the entirety of the spiritual path? Is it only about managing the negative, about alleviating pain and finding peace in the face of difficulty? Is a liberated heart merely one that no longer suffers, or is it something more? The Buddha's teachings point to something far more radiant. Beyond the simple absence of the negative, there is the active cultivation of the positive. There are 4 states of heart, known as the Brahma Viharas or the divine abodes, that are considered the most beautiful fruits of the path. We have touched on loving kindness and explored compassion. Now we turn to a quality that is perhaps the most rare and radical in our modern competitive world. This is the practice of mudita, which is most often translated as sympathetic or altruistic joy. Mudita is the ability to feel genuine, selfless happiness for the happiness, success, and good fortune of others. To understand the beauty of mudita, we must first be honest about its opposite, a subtle poison that runs deep in the human psyche. The feeling of envy and jealousy. Think of a time when a friend announced some wonderful news of promotion you secretly wanted. A new romantic partner when you were feeling lonely. A beautiful vacation you couldn't afford. In that moment, along with a genuine happiness for your friend, did you perhaps feel a subtle pang? A slight tightening in the chest, a quiet, sinking feeling. That is the sting of envy. It is the whisper of the ego that says, "Why them and not me?" It comes from a deep-seated and painful illusion that happiness is a limited resource, a zero-sum game. It is the belief that life is a single pie, and if someone else gets a large slice, that must mean there is less for you. This scarcity mindset keeps us trapped in a prison of constant comparison and competition. We can never truly rest or be happy with our own life, because we are always looking over our shoulder at what others have. Envy is a profound form of dukkha, a self-inflicted suffering born from the illusion of separation. Mudita is the antidote. It is the key that unlocks this prison door. We can see a beautiful, living example of mudita in the world of high-level sports. Imagine two athletes at the peak of human conditioning, competing in the final of an Olympic race. They have trained their entire lives for this single moment. They race, pushing their bodies and spirits to the absolute limit, and one wins by just a fraction of a second. The one who comes in second has just experienced a profound first arrow, the sting of falling short of their ultimate dream. In that moment, they have every reason to be consumed by their own disappointment. And yet, so often we see a moment of pure grace. The defeated athlete goes over to the winner, embraces them, and celebrates with them, their face shining with a genuine joy for their rival's accomplishment. What is happening in that moment? They are able to step outside their own ego story of personal loss and, for a moment, simply appreciate and delight in the spectacular human achievement of the winner. They find a shared joy in the beauty of the effort and the glory of the moment, even though it is not their own. This is mudita in action. It is the heart's ability to say yes to joy, no matter where it appears. This is a quality we can actively cultivate in our own hearts through meditation. The practice of mudita mirrors the practice of compassion, but instead of focusing on suffering, we focus on joy. We can begin now. Find your comfortable posture and let your mind settle. First, as a foundation, we must learn to rejoice in our own happiness. We are often so focused on what is wrong that we forget to appreciate what is right. So, bring to mind a moment in your own life, recent or distant, when you felt a genuine sense of success, contentment, or joy. It could be a personal accomplishment, a moment of connection with a loved one, or a simple moment of appreciating beauty in nature. Allow yourself to re-inhabit that feeling. Feel the joy in your body, let it warm you, and offer yourself the wish. May this happiness and good fortune continue. May I be able to appreciate and savor the moments of joy in my life. Now, bring to mind a very dear friend or a beloved family member. Picture them clearly. Think of something wonderful that has recently happened in their life. Perhaps they have achieved a goal they worked so hard for. Perhaps they are happy in a new relationship. Instead of just having a fleeting thought of "that's nice," actively try to share in their happiness. Let their joy become your joy. Feel it in your own heart. Let yourself smile with them. And extend to them the silent wish. I am so happy for you. May your joy and your good fortune increase. May your happiness be boundless. Next, stretch the muscle of your heart by bringing to mind a neutral person, an acquaintance for whom you have no strong feelings either way. You may not know the specifics of their life, but you can know with certainty that they, like all beings, wish to be happy. You can imagine them enjoying a simple pleasure, laughing with their children, enjoying a sunny afternoon, receiving a piece of good news. And you can extend the generous wish. Though I do not know you well, I wish you happiness. May you have many causes for joy in your life. This practice begins to break down the walls of our indifference. Now we come to the most challenging and transformative stage of the practice. Bring to mind someone you feel a sense of competition or even envy towards. A colleague, a rival, someone whose success has often triggered that subtle pang of pain in you. This is difficult territory, so be gentle with yourself. First, acknowledge the feeling of envy if it arises. Just see it with mindfulness, without judgment. Then, see if it is possible, even for just 1 second, to let go of the story of comparison and to wish them well. See their happiness not as a threat to your own, but simply as happiness existing in the world. And from a place of radical generosity, you can try to offer the thought, "Your happiness does not take away from mine. May you be happy. May you continue to have success." This practice is a direct antidote to the poison of envy. It is not for their benefit. It is to free your own heart from the prison of comparison. Finally, you expand your awareness as wide as it can go. Think of the countless beings on this planet. In this very moment, someone is celebrating a wedding. A child is being born. A family is sitting down to a joyful meal. A scientist is making a breakthrough. A puppy is chasing a ball in a field. There is a vast, immeasurable ocean of joy happening right now. Instead of feeling separate from it, you can choose to tap into it, to rejoice in all of it. And you can radiate the wish. May all beings everywhere find happiness and the causes for happiness. May their joy be endless and unceasing. When we practice mudita, we realize a profound truth. Happiness is not a limited resource. In fact, it is the opposite. It is generative and contagious. When you can feel joy for the happiness of others, your own opportunities for joy become infinite. You can feel happy anytime, anywhere, that someone else is happy. Your heart becomes a vast field that celebrates the flourishing of all life. It is the ultimate cure for the scarcity mindset. This joyful, celebratory heart, combined with a compassionate heart, creates a profound sense of connection to all beings. But how do we hold both the world's immense suffering and its immense joy without being constantly thrown off balance? What is the foundation upon which both karuna and mudita can rest? This leads us to the fourth and final divine abode, the crowning quality of a liberated heart. The profound, unshakable peace of upekkha, or equanimity. We have walked a long and beautiful path together on this journey inward. We have learned to meet the inevitable suffering of the world with the open, trembling heart of karuna, or compassion. We have learned to celebrate the good fortune and happiness of others with the generous, expansive heart of mudita, or sympathetic joy. We have learned to connect with the world through both its sorrows and its celebrations. But a heart that is so open, so radically engaged with the highs and lows of life, requires a deep and stable foundation. How do we hold both the pain and the joy without being constantly thrown off balance? How do we care deeply without being shattered? How do we love fully without the suffering of attachment? This leads us to the fourth and final of the divine abodes, the crowning jewel of the liberated heart. This is the quality of upekkha, or equanimity. To understand upekkha, imagine a great mountain. It stands majestic and serene, its peak touching the sky. In summer, the hot sun beats down upon it. In winter, it is covered in a thick blanket of snow. Fierce winds howl against its slopes, and torrential rains lash its cliffs. Clouds gather and disperse around its summit. The weather is constantly changing, sometimes gentle, sometimes violent. And yet, the mountain remains. It is not indifferent to the weather. It is fully present for all of it. It is warmed by the sun and washed by the rain. But it is not shaken. It is not moved. It does not complain about the storm or cling to the sunshine. It rests in a profound, unshakable stability, grounded in its own immense presence. To cultivate equanimity is to cultivate this mountain-like quality in our own heart. It is absolutely crucial to understand what equanimity is not. Its near enemy, the quality that looks similar but is in fact its opposite, is indifference. Indifference is a form of aversion. It is a closing down of the heart, a withdrawal from the world. Indifference says, "I don't care. It's not my problem." It is a shield we use to protect ourselves from being hurt. It is cold and isolating. Equanimity, on the other hand, is born from the deepest warmth and connection. It is the fruit of wisdom and compassion working together. Its heart is wide open, and it says, "I care deeply about all of it, but my peace will not be shaken by the outcome." Indifference is the heart turning to stone. Equanimity is the heart becoming as vast and as stable as the mountain, able to hold all of life's weather without being defined by it. It is the balance that allows us to practice compassion without suffering from burnout, and to feel joy for others without the sting of attachment. There is a story from the life of the great 20th century Thai meditation master, Ajahn Chah, that perfectly illustrates this wisdom in action. Ajahn Chah had a simple glass from which he would often drink water. A visiting student noticed that the master seemed to handle this particular glass with a special care and attention. The student began to think, "This must be a very special glass. The master is clearly attached to it." One day, the student built up the courage to ask him about it. Ajahn Chah picked up the glass and held it up to the light. "Yes," he said, "I love this glass. It holds water for me. It is beautifully made. When the sunlight catches it, it shines." He paused, and then with a gentle smile, he added, "But for me, this glass is already broken." He continued to use the glass every day. Then one day, as was inevitable, the glass was knocked over and it shattered on the floor. Ajahn Chah looked at the pieces without the slightest disturbance. This is the essence of upekkha. He was not being pessimistic when he said the glass was already broken. He was seeing it with the clear eyes of wisdom, the wisdom of anicca, or impermanence. He knew that the nature of a glass is to one day break. Because he had already accepted this truth in his heart, he was able to appreciate the glass fully and completely while it was whole, without desperately clinging to it. He could love it without attachment. And so, when the inevitable happened, his mind was not shattered along with the glass. There was no shock, no second arrow of, "Oh no, my favorite glass is ruined." There was only a calm recognition of reality. Of course. This is the peace that is born not from controlling life, but from understanding it. This mountain-like stability is what allows us to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of life, what the Buddha called the 8 worldly winds. These are the forces that constantly blow upon us, pushing us off balance. They come in 4 pairs of opposites: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and disrepute. The untrained mind is like a leaf in the wind, completely at the mercy of these forces. We are elated when we experience pleasure, gain, praise, or fame. We are crushed and despairing when we experience pain, loss, blame, or disrepute. Our inner peace is held hostage by external conditions. Equanimity is the practice of standing firm in the center of these winds. It does not mean we don't feel them. We still feel the warmth of praise and the sting of blame, but they no longer knock us over. We can receive praise with gratitude, but without it inflating our ego. We can receive blame and criticism, reflect on it for any truth it may hold, but without it destroying our sense of self-worth. We can experience the gain of money or possessions with appreciation, but without clinging to them as the source of our security. And we can experience the pain of loss with a genuine and open-hearted sadness, but without falling into utter despair. We understand that all of these conditions are like the weather, impermanent, impersonal, and forever changing. Our true refuge is not in favorable weather, but in the unshakable nature of the mountain itself. Upekkha, this profound equanimity, is the beautiful fruit of this entire path. It is the serene, spacious heart that has been softened by compassion and illuminated by wisdom. It is the peace that the world cannot give and cannot take away, because it does not depend on the world being any particular way. It is the ultimate letting go, the final arrival in a place of true and lasting freedom. This brings us to the end of our deep exploration of the specific qualities and practices of the path. We have journeyed from the initial, honest diagnosis of suffering, through the intricate workings of the mind, and into the cultivation of the most beautiful states of heart. We have gathered our tools, we have studied the map, we have learned how to sail the boat. We will now take a final step back, to look over the entire journey we have taken together from the first moments of confusion and pain to this place of profound understanding and peace. It is time now to summarize our journey and to distill its core, empowering message, so that we may carry it with us into every moment of our lives. We have arrived at the end of our journey together, but at the true beginning of our own. We began in a place of struggle, standing before the great undeniable truth of suffering, dukkha, feeling perhaps overwhelmed by its power. We felt the sting of life's first arrows and saw, with a painful clarity, how we so often shoot the second, third, and fourth arrows into ourselves, turning pain into prolonged suffering. We looked unflinchingly into the prisons of our own minds. The restless craving of tanha and the bitter aversion of dveshan. We discovered their source in a profound case of mistaken identity. The illusion of a solid, separate self, anatta. But our journey was not one of despair. It was one of discovery. Having diagnosed the illness, we began to gather the medicine. We found our anchor in the simple, loyal presence of the breath. We learned to listen to the forgotten wisdom of the body. We sat on the banks of the river of our minds, learning to watch the flow of feelings and thoughts without being swept away by the current. We found that our own pain, when met with courage, could be transformed into a boundless compassion for all who suffer. We discovered that our joy, when shared, could become limitless. We learned that the ultimate peace is not found in controlling the world, but in the unshakable equanimity of a heart that is open to it all. We have, in essence, traveled the path from seeing pain as our enemy to recognizing it as our greatest teacher. And so we are left with a new understanding of peace. We are so often taught that peace is a destination, a calm, tranquil harbor, where the seas are always still and the winds never blow. We have learned here that this is a fantasy. Life is a vast ocean, and its nature is to have waves. There will always be the changing winds of gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. True peace, the enduring peace we have cultivated together, is not the absence of waves. It is the art of learning how to surf. It is the discovery of an unshakable stability within ourselves, the stability of the mountain that feels the weather but is not moved by it. It is the realization of the vast, open sky of awareness that holds all the clouds but is not stained by them. Peace is not a place without problems. It is the presence of wisdom, compassion, and spaciousness in the midst of our problems. Pain, we now see, is not a punishment or a mistake. It is an invitation. It is a sacred calling from life itself, asking us to look deeper, to love more fiercely, and to awaken to the magnificent truth of who we really are. In the beginning of our journey, we imagined ourselves cupping our hands around a tiny flickering candle, desperately trying to protect our fragile peace from the storms of the world. We now know that the goal was never to stop the wind. The goal was to build a lantern. The clear glass of that lantern is the wisdom you have cultivated. The steady, warm air inside is the compassion you have learned to hold for yourself and for all beings. And the flame, shining brightly and steadily now, even amidst the storm, is your own innate goodness, your own awakened heart. You have all the tools you need. The path is not in some distant land or ancient text. It is right here, beneath your feet, within your own body, breath, and mind. Trust the wisdom you have discovered. Be patient and kind with yourself as you walk this path. It begins, always and again, with the simplicity of a single, conscious breath. May you walk through your life with a peaceful heart, a clear mind, and a light that illuminates the way, not just for yourself, but for all. The journey is yours. It has just begun.